Chapter 708, Explosive Weapon Style. 1. It is not important who I am. The old man gave an honest-looking smile. The youth was like a coiled snake ready to strike. His muscles were tense for him to leap at any moment, and was filled with danger. The smile on the old man's face did not change. A moment later, the youth suddenly relaxed and then lazily curled back into the empty space. 2. At most 20, the youth picked up a blood grape and threw it into his mouth. He said around the grape, "If you can give Xiao Mo Gu to us, we can give you all of them." The old man chuckled. 2 is fine. However, before Xiao Mo Gu appears, you have to protect Xiao Yunhai. Elder, you care a lot about Xiao Yunhai. The youth said meaningfully. Of course, he is someone that can forge Sky Missouri weapons. This old man still hopes to get a Sky Missouri weapon to play with in this lifetime, the old man said directly. Sky Missouri weapon? The youth stilled with a doubtful face. Really? He just managed an Earth MO weapon. Just watch. The old man waved his hand with confidence on his face. The doubt on the youth's face did not fade. He felt that the old man's goal was not so simple, but he couldn't see it from the other's face. Zhua Mo did not know the situation outside. He was staying in the MO weapon pool and was focused on forging Earth MO weapons. Looking at the scraps of MO weapons in the pool, he shook his head and grimaced. This weapon layering craftsmanship doesn't succeed every time. I really had good luck last time. Each failure would waste 10 general-level MO weapons. After a few failures, the number of general-level MO weapons Zhua Mo possess had dramatically decreased. Zhua Mo's heart bled at such a terrible waste. Zhua Mo thought that he had already mastered the weapon layering craftsmanship, but with every MO weapon layer, the difficulty would multiply. When the time for the fifth weapon to be merged together, the MO weapon would become extremely unstable and the possibility of failure would suddenly increase. Even a skilled MO weapon master like Zhua Mo didn't have a solution. Earth MO weapons required at least 10 general-level MO weapons, and not one less. After losing dozens of general MO weapons, Zhua Mo couldn't tolerate this kind of loss. Each general MO weapon was over 3 million mabe. In other words, Zhua Mo's losses had reached upwards of 1 billion mabe. If it was one of the great families, they may not care, but Zhua Mo felt great pain. Of course, what do you think Earth MO weapons are? Pu Yao said dismissively. Zhua Mo stilled. He sank into thought. Ever since he forged the Sky Snake 10 manifestation pike, he thought he had grasped the secrets of Earth MO weapon. He had been filled with confidence about forging new Earth MO weapons, but the results were completely different than what he had predicted. After losing nearly 1 billion mabe, Zhua Mo had to rethink. The weapon layering craftsmanship was a simple method, but it was not one that could reliably produce weapons. Zhua Mo suddenly found that he had entered a wrong path, and had relied too much on the weapon layering craftsmanship. MO weapons and talismans were completely different in the minds of other people, but in Zhua Mo's eyes, there were no innate differences. One was just MO matrices, and the other seal scripts. Earth MO weapons that were the top of MO weapons had a common trait. They could completely express some hidden power of bloodlines. This was also why Earth MO weapons were so valuable. Its core was MO matrices. Thinking back to what he had learned, countless MO matrices flashed across his mind. Zhua Mo's gaze slowly became bright. His eyes were like stars in the night. MO matrices that could awaken the bloodline were all powerful. They were usually MO matrices that were already formed as part of top-level materials. Normal MO weapon masters just activated these hidden MO matrices. But Zhua Mo had a deeper understanding of MO matrices. He knew that MO matrices could be inscribed like seal scripts. Inscribing MO matrices had been one of his old jobs. Then the next question was what could be used to hold the MO matrices. Only strong materials could tolerate such powerful MO matrices. Normal MO weapon masters could only use those worldly treasures, but Zhua Mo had a wonderful idea. Weapon layering craftsmanship. The stability of the weapon layering craftsmanship would drastically decrease after the 5th MO weapon, but before this, Zuomo's precise control would guarantee that it would not feel. Zuomo's weapon layering craftsmanship had all failed after the 6th merge. A MO weapon after 5 merges would not have the power of an Earth MO weapon, but it could act to hold the MO matrices. General level MO weapons were valuable, but they were extremely cheap compared to those worldly treasures. Even more importantly, this method would allow Zua MO could endlessly produce Earth MO weapons. Inspiration flooded him. He thought of the water forging method, thought of how to unite seal scripts, thought of. Zua MO sat next to the MO weapon pool, day after day, and completely lost in himself in thought like a statue. Zua MO did not move for 5 whole days. On the 6th day, his body suddenly shook and he seemed to wake from a deep sleep. Awake, Zuomo's eyes were as bright as stars. He walked around in the MO weapon pool in circles. On the 5th circuit, he suddenly stopped. He took out a pile of materials from his ring and started to forge using the Sunshin fire. The black ore quickly turned to metal liquid in the Sunshin fire. The fire flickered as though it was alive. Zuomo's fingers flew. Streaks of light entered the liquid metal in the fire like birds returning to the nest. Clink, clink, clink. Small black nails dropped from the flame and landed on the ground, giving off ringing sounds. The black nails were about 3 cun long and covered in MO matrices. A smile appeared on Zuomo's face. This was the first time he used the ways of forging talismans to set up MO matrices. The results were better than he had expected. This method was possible. Zuomo's face flushed in excitement. He flew into the air above the MO weapon pool. The black nails in the air entered the empty space around the MO weapon pool accurately. Then lights of different colors fell from his hands. These lights disappeared when they reached the ground, but there would be faint lines left in the earth. As the lights continued to land, the lines around the MO weapon pool increased. If MO weapon masters were present, they would find to their surprise that these lines seemed to resemble MO matrices that they knew. However, these MO matrices were modified from the ones they usually saw. No one would think that Zua MO would use the structure of seal scripts to set up MO matrices. The lines increased in number and the MO matrices became even more complex. The silent MO weapon pool started to grow restless, boiling and roiling. Countless icy underflows deep in the underground Nether River were like sharks that smelt blood and furiously flooded towards the Heaven Tier MO weapon pool. These icy undercurrents were the best for forging MO weapons. However, they mostly existed deep in the river and were hard to obtain. They were also extremely icy. Disregarding how hard they were to control, those that were weak in MO skills would turn to ice statues if the cold energy entered their bodies. Due to this, even though people knew that these icy undercurrents were very suited to forging MO weapons, no one dared to use them. Zua MO did not fear them. He continued to cast light energies. As the cold flows entered, the restless MO weapon pool quickly calmed down. Threads of cold energy rose from the surface of the pool. Icy frost spread on the ground in all directions. But when the frost went near the MO matrices, they would quickly melt and evaporate. The MO weapon pool that had originally been black was now a transparent blue. There wasn't any impurities. The undercurrents were like tiny little nimble fish that swam around the pool and caused ripples on the surface. Countless undercurrents moved around. Countless ripples were produced in the clear pool, which was dazzling to see. Zua MO finally showed satisfaction. He had used a water seal formation and MO matrices on the MO weapon pool to take the icy undercurrents of the river and create a MO weapon pool of an unprecedented level. The icy energy of the MO weapon pool did not affect Zua MO at all. Zua MO took out a general level MO weapon, and then another, and then more. Moments later, there was a pile of general level MO weapons in front of him. If the chief steward of Rare Artifacts Hall saw this, his eyes would probably drop to the floor. Even the Rare Artifacts Hall would definitely be unable to produce so many general level MO weapons immediately. He did any inventor. There were more than 60 articles. Zwa mo picked and choose 60. His expression was excited, and inspiration swirled in his mind. Countless strange plans floated in his mind, and he wanted to immediately try all of them. Looking at the 60 general-level MO weapons in front of him, an unprecedented and made idea suddenly rose. Once this idea came out, he could not suppress it. Just having had made a breakthrough, Zwa mo's entire mind was completely taken over by his inspiration. He felt as though his mind had never been so clear and sensitive. Once a thought rose, his mind seemed to be able to automatically perfect the plan. There wasn't any hardship or delay. The pleasure from this made him so excited he almost wanted to groan. Without any hesitation, he listed all the materials he needed at an astounding efficiency and threw it to Beansprout that had been standing by the door. He did not stop. He started to forge. MO weapons were being thrown into the pool. Beansprout had been standing by the door and was so bored that he almost fell asleep. He was standing by the door and waiting in the case Grandmaster had any errands for him to run. He had been very excited to have gotten this duty. He had tried to be alert and waited for Grandmaster to order him at any moment. Yet his MO physique was very weak and he was not mentally strong. After waiting for 3 days, he was unable to hold up. He had withered like a tomato after the frost and yawned continuously. Suddenly, a light flew from inside and landed in his arms. Beansprout immediately shook and hurriedly climbed up. Grandmaster definitely had work for him. When he saw it was a list that had flown into his arms, he understood immediately that Grandmaster required some materials. He became alert. Grandmaster had already spoken with Rare Artifacts Hall. He could go and take any materials that were needed. If it was low-level materials, he would go to the city market. But when Beansprout's gaze swept across the list, he turned to stone, his mouth wide open and gaping. Chapter 709, Explosive Weapon Style, 2, Rare Artifacts Hall. The middle-aged MO looked at the list in his hand as though he wanted to find something. He was speechless momentarily. Beansprout was urgently waiting for his response. It would be terrible if he was unable to complete the first task that Grandmaster had given to him. However, he also knew the shock that this list gave people. There was an astounding number requested of each item on the packed list. It was enough to cause people's hearts to beat rapidly. He had delivered the list anxiously. He felt it was very unlikely that Rare Artifacts Hall would agree. There were many valuable materials on the list, and when they were gathered together, it was a great number. No one would be able to easily maintain their composure at such a list. You are sure Grandmaster requested this? The middle-aged MO looked with slight suspicion at Beansprout. If it wasn't for the fact that they had reached an agreement with Grandmaster Xiao Yunhai before this, he would have suspected that Beansprout fabricated the list and wanted to take these materials and run. It was not that the materials themselves were too valuable and rare, but there were too many of each material requested. There weren't just a variety of types, the amount of each material was astoundingly large. As the chief steward of Rare Artifacts Hall, the middle-aged MO was not skilled in forging MO weapons, but he had basic knowledge of the field. The materials on this list was enough to forge enough MO weapons for a troop of over 100. What did Grandmaster want to do? Was so much material needed to forge one Earth MO weapon? This was so strange. So unconventional. The amount of materials used far surpassed his knowledge. Maybe Grandmaster was doing an experiment. This thought caused the middle-aged MO to relax. MO weapon masters would frequently try out different forging methods, and some MO weapon masters preferred to test their new inspirations. This was undoubtedly a course of action that would burn through the most resources, but this kind of mobe-wasting action was appropriate for their status and identity. Grandmaster definitely had some new inspiration. All of the materials were the preparations in order to test out his new ideas. It was definitely that. The middle-aged MO sighed in relief. He was a decisive person. After the initial shock, he quickly found a realistic explanation for Xiao Yunhai's request. Once he found this reason, this list seemed reasonable. While the materials listed represented a great number, a Grandmaster would qualify to guarantee this. Also, The middle-aged Mo thought that if a Mo weapon grandmaster had new ideas, this meant that the possibility of forging a new Earth Mo weapon was higher. After thinking for a moment, the middle-aged Mo quickly made a decision. There are many materials here that this store doesn't have, and I will need to request them from other branch stores. It will take a few days. 3 days from now, the materials will be delivered to Grandmaster's Mo weapon pool. Bean Sprout actually stilled. The other had really agreed. For the first time, Bean Sprout had experienced the power of the word Grandmaster. Without the residents of Buzhou City realizing it, many unfamiliar outsiders had appeared around the city. These people did not look friendly. They gave off a feeling of danger, and their gazes were always wary. The arrival of these people tested the public peace of Buzhou City. Small-scale fights occurred on successively days. Yet what shocked people was that the Tang family that was responsible for order in Buzhou City was left on the losing side. This caused the state of Buzhou City's peace to worsen. The Tang family patriarch was furious after learning this, and moved the strongest battalion of the Tang family, the Tangwen Battalion, near Buzhou City. They quickly captured more than a dozen of the culprits, and the heads of these people were hung above the city gates as a warning. Such vicious moves immediately intimidated many of those with devious intentions. But as more and more experts came, the Tang family's nerves became tense. If they were careless, and caused a conflict, it could cause much of Buzhou City to be destroyed in fighting. This loss was not something the Tang family could afford. Soon, a strange rumor gradually spread. The rumor said that Marshal Di was about to ally with Tian Huan by marriage with Gong Zishi. There was even a rumor that Gong Zishi already had an important Tian Huan female serving him. In a short few days, the rumors spread quickly. By the time Tang Chen learned of this, the entire city knew. Someone is spreading this from the shadows. Gongzi's Zai's handsome face was dark. He said coldly, "This rumor did not come early or late, but at such a sensitive time, their intentions are not friendly. Who also knows the identity of Miss Xian Er?" Tang Chen's expression was normal and no emotion could be seen. "Only my personal guards." Gongzi Zai's tone was bitter as he said awkwardly. Other than his personal guards, no one knew Li Xian Er's identity. There definitely was a traitor. Murderousness flashed through Gongzi Zai's eyes. Tang Chen noticed the murderousness that flickered through Gongzi Zai's eyes and did not say more. He said after a moment, "Virtuous nephew, do not pay attention to the gossip. Try to not go out. The people outside the city are suspect, and have other aims. We need to deal with them carefully." Gongzi she said respectfully. "Uncle, do not worry, this nephew knows what is important. Uncle Zhong and Uncle Qin will come in the next few days. With them are 200 general elite, and they are all guards that have followed my father Marshal for many years." Tang Chen became alert when he heard this. They have come at a good time. Well, let these people be free for a few more days. The two exchanged a smile, and their worried expressions disappeared. The situation of Buzhou City became even stranger. The rumors still spread, but Gongzi Shi, who was the focus of the rumor, did not come out in public. No faction had expressed any opinion about this matter. The rumors seemed to lose steam. People's eyes turned more towards the Heaven Tier Mo weapon pool in the underground Nether River. Countless eyes stared at the Heaven Tier Mo weapon pool. In the past, only Mo weapon masters would come to the underground Nether River. Now, there were Mo everywhere. They would glance occasionally across the Heaven Tier Mo weapon pool and then casually chat. There isn't any noise, it really is boring to watch. Yes, yes. What Earth Mo weapon, he can really boast. He conned us all here, but he hasn't made a peep. Ah, let's wait a bit more. Is an Earth Mo weapon so easy to forge? We can only wait. Suddenly, they noticed the sound of chatting around them quieted. They stopped their discussion, instinctively raised their heads and were stunned. An enormous Mo steed troop appeared in their field of view in the sky. The riders of these Mo steeds were all tired and dirty. They clearly had just endured a long journey. However, what was most attention-catching was the astoundingly large number of boxes on the Mo steeds' backs. Each box was more than 1 zhang in all 3 of its dimensions. People who had stayed for a long time in Buzhou City immediately recognized the origins of these Mo steeds. It's Rare Artifacts Hall. Heavens! Rare Artifacts Hall. Gasps rose. People's gazes were filled with shock. There were more than 500 Mo steeds in this troop and more than 300 guards. They were travel-worn, but their presence was controlled. Their casual glances would give people great pressure. Elite. 300 elite. Hiss, many people inhaled in shock. Anyone with a small amount of knowledge would know that the things that were protected by such elite guards were definitely astounding in value. They then looked at the enormous boxes on the backs of the 200 or so Mo steeds. Many people's gazes heated up. But those with more knowledge looked at the boxes of different colors mixed within the 200 large boxes. These metal boxes of different colors took up 1/3 of the total number. They knew that these boxes were of the highest value. The boxes possessed special characteristics, such as thermal regulation, and were used to hold materials with special qualities. Such an astounding amount of materials was a great amount of wealth. Heavy breathing rose in the corners. The gazes that crossed in the air burned with greed. The captain of the Mo steed guards was like a metal tower. His expression was cold, his upper body was bare and covered in crisscrossing scars. He noticed the greedy gazes in the surroundings. His expression turned cold and he snorted. It was like thunder rolling across the air. Countless people seemed to be struck by lightning, showed shock, and all of their desires were swept away. The other guards acted as though nothing had happened. The troop stopped outside the Heaven Tier Mo weapon pool. A steward got off the Mo steed and bowed towards Beansprout. He said as though relieved of a great burden. The road was long, but we did not fail. Rare Artifacts Hall has brought all that Grandmaster requested, please inspect and accept. The guards took the metal boxes off the Mo steeds and put them onto the empty ground in front of Beansprout. The boxes were opened. When the materials of 200 large metal boxes were put together, it was like an enormous mountain. The rare materials released all kinds of colored light. The scene was spectacular. The power that the materials had even formed a small twister. Countless people were stunned by this scene. The underground Nether River was deathly silent. Beansprout swallowed. He was also greatly shocked by the mountain of materials in front of him, but he was mentally prepared. He still remembered his own mission. He started to inventory the materials. The list that Grandmaster had given had precise numbers, and he did not want any mistakes on his part. The crowd seemed to wake up and then exploded. Heavens! So materials. They didn't all understand Earth Mo weapon crafting, but this was the underground Nether River. There were many Mo weapon masters. Some experienced Mo weapon masters quickly made precise estimates. These materials would be enough to forge 200 top-level Colonel-level Mo weapons, or 20 good quality General-level Mo weapons. Just the estimated value of the materials was 2 billion mabe. Some people finally recalled that the rumor was that Xiao Yunhai had reached an agreement with Rare Artifacts Hall for them to supply materials. But no one had expected that Xiao Yunhai would demand such an amount of materials, and Rare Artifacts Hall would actually give them to him. 2 billion mabe. What did Xiao Yunhai want to do? Was Rare Artifacts Hall insane as well? Chapter 710, Explosive Weapon Style, 3. The mountain of materials that was worth a substantial amount was piled outside the Heaven Tier Mo weapon pool. The light that they gave off illuminated the entire underground Nether River. Every person who saw this spectacular scene would unconsciously stop breathing. All of Buzhou City was left stunned. Countless people fought to enter the underground Nether River to see this rare sight. The underground Nether River that was usually quiet and sparsely populated was filled with people. The light given off by 2 billion mabe caused gasps. There were also those that tried to sneak their way in among the chaotic crowded, but the 300 guards of Rare Artifacts Hall were on their guard. These guards had cold expressions, and gave off dangerous auras. Those with some experience were all able to see that they were all elite forces. Also, when Tang Chen heard the news, he also sent a troop out to help with security. Facing such a tight guard, those with greedy desires could only stare. News of this event quickly spread, and caused a heated discussion in the MO territories. The great majority of people saw this and treated it as a joke. In the eyes of the majority, Xiao Yunhai announcing in a flamboyant manner that he was going to forge a new Earth MO weapon was because he didn't know his own limits. Now, he had made such a great ruckus. Many people who had been neutral before didn't have a good impression of him now. Yet no one had expected that the participation of two people caused the matter to reach a new climax. MO Weapon Grandmaster Bo Qing'an, MO Weapon Grandmaster Yan Man. Unlike Xiao Yunhai who had just become famous, these two grandmasters had a great amount of experience. They were some of the top grandmasters of the present era, and the idols of countless MO weapon masters, especially Grandmaster Bo Qing'an. He was one of the only 3 grandmasters who had forged 2 Earth MO weapons among all the MO weapon grandmasters. He had absolute authority in the field of MO weapon forging. The 2 grandmasters were the founders of the MO Weapon Master Association, and their statuses were high. I have never thought that there would be a MO weapon grandmaster that would dare claim something so shocking. Yes, he forged an Earth MO weapon. When considering his age, this is a proud accomplishment, but I want to say that young people have to keep their feet on the ground. Earth MO weapons are the pinnacle of MO weapons, their worth far surpasses your imagination. Do not think that just because you were lucky to forge one Earth MO weapon that you have reached the end of that world. Also, as a MO weapon master, you are clownish in your actions to attract attention, and humiliate the prestige of MO weapon master. Grandmaster Yan Man's tone was strong, his expression filled with dislike, and his words were not polite. Grandmaster Bo Qing'an's tone was much calmer, but his words were also more careful. I saw this list of materials he requested, and there are many materials that are unexpected to me. He may have some novel ideas, but I have to say that with just these materials, he cannot forge an Earth MO weapon. A skilled MO weapon grandmaster can turn normal materials into great MO weapons, but this does not mean that all materials can be used to forge Earth MO weapons. The words of the 2 MO weapon masters quickly spread. There had been arguments, but it immediately became one-sided. In the attacks, Xiao Yunhai was like a clown. The only result would be humiliating himself. People even started to suspect that the Sky Snake 10 manifestation pike was not an Earth MO weapon. That was just a con that Rare Artifacts Hall and Xiao Yunhai had made up. The situation is not very good. The manager's expression was calm, but his eyes were panicked. Oh. The middle-aged MO idly savored his tea with a calm expression. How bad is it? There are many guests that have sent messages inquiring about this matter. There were a few large orders about to be confirmed, but the customers have stopped. They clearly are doubtful, the manager reported in a small voice. Oh, what else is there? Report it all together, the middle-aged MO said with a small smile. As of last night, 15 MO weapon masters have quit. The MO Weapon Master Association has called them into question. The manager's tone started to turn panicked. The smile on the middle-aged MO's face disappeared. He straightened and said in a deep voice, "Why is the MO Weapon Master Association interfering?" It probably due to Bo Qing'an and Yan Man's attitudes. The other MO weapon masters are not resolute, and if it wasn't for the fact that we treated them well over the years, more of them would have left. The manager looked carefully at the middle-aged MO. The middle-aged MO was silent. In their infancy, the MO Weapon Master Association had just been a loose network that was started by a few MO weapon grandmasters. With grandmasters leading the way, they constructed a complete and detailed categorization system for weapons and provided numerous services. They would exchange ideas at regular intervals and hold classes. They would provide members with a variety of materials at low prices, help the members sell the MO weapons they had forged and so on. With these actions, the MO Weapon Master Association quickly grew and recruited more members. The evaluations of the association were highly trusted and accepted by all factions. The association quickly grew into a powerful organization. They now controlled almost half of the high-level MO weapon market. This was a terrifying number, and even more terrifying was their unparalleled influence on MO weapon masters. For a business, the loss of a few orders wasn't a big problem. However, the loss of large numbers of MO weapon masters was enough to hurt their foundation. If a business did not have a steady source of wares, it would greatly affect their reputation and credit. So the middle-aged MO was unable to sit still when he heard about the loss of the MO weapon masters. The middle-aged MO's expression changed. He hadn't thought the MO Weapon Master Association would interfere. The departure of these MO weapon masters was clearly due to the machinations of the MO Weapon Master Association. He knew why this was. They attacked Xiao Yunhai because Xiao Yunhai wasn't a member of the MO Weapon Master Association. The way that the MO Weapon Master Association acted now was different than at the beginning. Because of the great profits they enjoyed, they tried to do all they could to recruit more MO weapon masters, and the MO weapon masters with talent but were not willing to enter the association would be suppressed both openly and in secret. This wasn't news. All the factions were increasingly wary of the MO Weapon Master Association. However, those with power would nurture their own MO weapon masters. However, not every faction had a MO weapon grandmaster. If Xiao Yunhai really could forge a new Earth MO weapon, he would immediately enter the ranks of the greatest MO weapon masters. If one considered his age, his potential was unlimited. His fame would immediately surpass the grandmasters of the association. It had been many years since a new MO weapon grandmaster had appeared. This Xiao Yunhai who suddenly came out probably caused the grandmasters of the MO Weapon Master Association to feel threatened. A cold smirk rose on the middle-aged Mo's lips. Rare Artifacts Hall never skimped on their dues to the MO Weapon Master Association, and he hadn't thought that the association wouldn't even speak to them before directly attacking them. Those grandmasters have fallen due to the temptation of the Mabe. In just a few moments, the middle-aged MO calculated the losses and gains. If he submitted to the MO Weapon Master Association, while he could gain some short-time benefit, but he would be controlled by the other in the future. Rather than so, it was better to gamble on Xiao Yunhai. Go, send another portion of items on that list to Xiao Yunhai, the middle-aged MO said coldly. The manager jumped. But Grandmaster Xiao probably doesn't need. Then just add it to the pile there. The middle-aged MO said coldly, go tell the child that Grandmaster Xiao took in, he's called Bean Sprout, have him tell Grandmaster to request whatever materials he needs. If our Rare Artifacts Hall have them, then we will give them to him. The manager just prepared to acknowledge with a wildly beating heart when the middle-aged MO's tone changed. No, wait. The manager relaxed slightly. Darren had not lost his mind yet. Also tell the branch stores. Every store will pick 3 of their top materials and send it with their best guards. When they arrive, pile them in front of the Heaven Tier MO weapon pool. Tell Grandmaster he can use them as he pleases. I only have one request, he has to forge an Earth MO weapon. The middle-aged MO gritted his teeth. That composed face was filled with murderousness. Due to the matters of Rare Artifacts Hall, the rumors about Gongzi Shi in Buzhou City cooled down. Old Zhong. Old Qin. Tang Chen was overjoyed when he saw the people who had come. You are still like before. Zhong Wentian looked at Tang Chen and a hint of excitement flashed through his eyes. No one knew that they had met each other in youth, traveled together and fought together. They had formed a close relationship. Qing Min was also smiling as he said happily, other than Marshal D, everyone is here. His voice was soft, and he was also very handsome. The reunion of old friends stirred emotions and nostalgia. Moments later, they sat down. Gongzi Shi respectfully sat at the end. Zhong Wentian and Qin Ming were subordinates of Marshal D, but Marshal D treated them like brothers. Gongzi Shi also grew up under their eyes, and they were even closer than normal uncles and nephews. Suddenly, the chief steward of the Tang family walked hurriedly in and whispered at Tang Chen's ear. A look flashed across Tang Chen's face. Seeing the other people look at him, he explained, Rare Artifacts Hall and the MO Weapon Master Association have started to fight. MO Weapon Master Association. Qin Ming's eyes turned icy, and his soft voice was murderousness. They aren't good. Tang Chen stilled. What? Did you have a fight with them? It isn't anything major. Qin Ming waved his hand and said unconcernedly. Once, we urgently needed some MO weapons. They asked for a great price, and wanted us to trade using MO weapon masters. We naturally were not willing. Then they tried to sabotage us in secret, forcing no other families to dare to sell to us. And then? Tang Chen asked curiously. Ha! Then old Zhong went to them and killed 12 general levels before they were frightened and sold the MO weapons to us, Qin Ming said with a smile. Zhong Wentian laughed. Tang Chen's expression changed. At this time, there was a ruckus outside. Chapter 711, The Continuation of the Explosive Weapon Style. 1. Idiot, you dare to fight against our MO Weapon Master Association, you don't want to live. A blue-eyed male within the crowd hatefully spat out. He doesn't know what is good for him. If he works with us, he gets what he wants. It is a pity that our people didn't even manage to meet with him. It would have been fine if he was low-key, but he had to say that he was going to forge a second Earth MO weapon. We would be completely stupid not to use such an opportunity that was gifted to us, a golden-haired male said. I really want to see the expression of Rare Artifacts Hall tomorrow. The blue-eyed male laughed darkly. The big ship is about to sink. Who is willing to go down with it? When Rare Artifacts Hall find that they have less than half of its MO weapon masters, wouldn't they regret it? Ha! A harsh punishment will show our power, the golden-haired male said with a smug laugh. Suddenly, gasp rang out along the street. The duo heard the shouts of Rare Artifacts Hall. The two exchanged a look and flew into the sky without any hesitation. In the sky, a troop of about 50 MO steeds was coming towards Buzhou City at top speed. Under the gates, the manager of Rare Artifacts Hall, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately flew into the sky. He bowed towards the MO steed troop and his expression was solemn. This one is the local manager, Qian Duo. Everyone, you have worked hard. Which store are you from? From Flower Mile Jie. The large man at the front bowed slightly with a cool expression. He was carrying a dark gold box on his back that was adorned with exquisite MO matrices. While the group of 50 had traveled a long way, and were covered in dust, their power could not be disguised. Qian Duo did not waste words. He said with a solemn expression, Please come with me. The large man did not hesitate and followed first. The group silently followed Qian Duo. They moved in the direction of the entrance to the underground Nether River. Discussion rose in the surroundings. People's gazes were fixed on the dark gold box on the back of the troop leader. Those with some experience knew that boxes of this kind were expensive to make, and were usually used to hold some peerlessly rare materials. Had Xiao Yunhai requested some special materials again? People discussed in curiosity. Everyone had a feeling that this matter was going to change again. In the crowd, the two from the MO Weapon Master Association looked at each other. They also had a bad feeling. Some people were preparing to see what was happening at the underground Nether River while others prepared to leave. Suddenly, someone shouted, Look! Another small group appeared over the horizon. A similarly strong group of guards, the same dark gold box. They entered the underground Nether River just like the previous one. In the following time, people gaped. Small groups from Rare Artifact Hall continued to arrive over the horizon. Elite guards, dark gold boxes. These little groups from Rare Artifact Hall all had solemn expressions. They flowed into the city, and their target was the underground Nether River. Even the stupidest person knew that something amazing was happening right now. Many people immediately ran for the underground Nether River to see. When people arrive at the underground Nether River, they were dumbstruck by what they saw. Dozens of dark gold boxes were neatly placed on the ground. All of the boxes were opened, each flashed with bright light like fire burning in the darkness. They illuminated the dim underground Nether River as though it was daylight. It was the blinding light that belonged to the top materials. The unique ripples were like the heartbeat of wild beasts that filled the entire underground Nether River. The 2 billion mabe of materials had only caused people to sigh over the enormous amount of wealth. But every dark gold box and any of the materials in them caused people to become breathless. The great majority of people didn't recognize even one, but they knew that these were all top materials, the top materials that existed in legends. Yes, in legends, this word caused these lights and vibrations to become untouchable. People were not as excited, they fell silent. The light and vibrations that these materials gave off were like those solemn and powerful elite guards. They emanated their power without any disguise. People were always greedy and hungry for wealth, but they were always filled with respect and awe towards great power. The people who had been restless seeing the growing number of elite guards were completely calmed down now. The desire in their eyes suddenly disappeared. Rare Artifact Hall dared to put these materials that were worth entire cities in public view. This meant that they had absolute confidence they would be able to protect them. Those that knew more finally remembered at this time that Rare Artifacts Hall had a history of millennia. The number of dark gold boxes continued to increase. The light continued to grow brighter. Even the slowest person now understood that Rare Artifacts Hall was showing its power. Why would Rare Artifacts Hall show their power without any reservation at such a sensitive time? No matter what was going on behind the scene at this time, it was the first time that top materials had been displayed like this in all of the MO territories. Large numbers of MO weapon masters came. Each of these top materials were worth cities, and it was rare for them to see them as well. The underground Nether River of Buzhou City attracted the eyes of the entire MO world. Bean Sprout felt as though his breathing was slightly difficult. These lights were so close to him it was like a dream. The vibrations that these materials released came in waves. He felt as though he was the little boat in the middle of a storm and would be upturned at any time. All of the top materials were worldly treasures. They usually were formed naturally over eras, and contained great power. The power that dissipated out was still too strong for Bean Sprout. Suddenly, a red figure appeared in front of him. The astounding vibrations immediately disappeared. Bean Sprout knew the other had blocked the vibrations for him. He said gratefully, "Thanks." Tsing Lianer did not seem to hear it. Her eyes were looking in the distance. A hint of worry flashed through her eyes. In her eyes, the dark gold boxes covered in light was a pile of trouble. And big trouble. Rare Artifacts Hall's attitude was clear. Tsing Lianer was perceptive and she immediately realized that something had happened outside. Otherwise, Rare Artifacts Hall's attitude would not be so strong. It really was great trouble. Zhuo didn't know what was happening outside at all. He didn't have any knowledge of the MO Weapon Master Association. Regardless of whether he knew the person or not, he had refused to see any of them in this recent while. He didn't care who had been stopped by. The new Heaven Tier MO weapon pool was good, but it demanded more of the user. Even Zhuo had to focus all his attention to reach a satisfactory level. In order to stop others from disturbing him, Zhuo set up Jinji around the MO weapon pool. The present Heaven Tier MO weapon pool was completely cut off from the outside. Zhuo released a breath. 10 MO weapon rudiments of different colors were floating in the clear blue pond. The cold energy of the pool had lessened greatly. The 60 general level MO weapons had formed 10 MO weapon rudiments. 2 mistakes had occurred in the process, and these were the only 2 mistakes that Zhuo had committed. Working at full concentration easily tired people out. Even Zhuo could not avoid having made mistakes with 2 of them. Zhuo was still satisfied with this result. He sat in lotus position and quickly entered meditation. He was really too tired, and he quickly entered a meditation state. 10 balls of different colored lights suddenly appeared in the MO weapon pool. Each light shrouded one MO weapon rudiment. The 10 lights flashed as though they were breathing. In the depths of the underground Nether River, countless minuscule cold currents were like sharks that smelt blood and flooded towards the Heaven-tier MO weapon pool. The same situation was also occurring in the depths of the underground Nether River hundreds of li away from the Heaven-tier MO weapon pool. No one would think that an astounding change was occurring in the underground Nether River that was so calm on the surface. The MO weapon pool water in front of Zwa Mo started to rise. Deep in his meditative state, Zwa Mo did not know. A short while later, the height of the water in the pool was the same as the ground in the surroundings, yet the currents that flowed in showed no signs of stopping. They continued to come in. The water continued to rise, but they did not spread into the surroundings. There seemed to be an invisible hand that was pulling water up like a pillar of water. The light of the 10 MO weapon rudiments grew even brighter. They slowly spun in the water. The water was pulled along and the pillar of water continued to spin. The small currents deep in the underground Nether River moved even more quickly. They were like a school of fish that dove to the bottom of the river as they swam towards the Heaven-tier MO weapon pool. The currents contained power, and when tens of thousands of them gathered together, even the steely bed of the river started to tremble. Boom, boom, boom. The ground around the underground Nether River started to tremble as though tens of thousands of horse were galloping underground. The people in the surroundings had terrified expressions. What was happening? An earthquake? The underground Nether River was located dozens of miles underground. As the riverbed started to shake, it caused a string of effects. The rock above people's heads started to fall. Everyone started to panic. Screams filled the air as people sprinted furiously towards the entrance. This was deep down in the ground. If they were buried alive, even the most powerful MO skill couldn't save them. At this time, they didn't care about any worldly treasures. Everyone only had one thought in their mind: get out as fast as possible. Yet the passage was not wide to begin with, and there were too many people gathered here. People fought to get ahead and the scene was chaotic. The falling of rocks caused the scene to become even worse. Outside the MO weapon pool, Bean Sprout had a panicked expression. This place is about to collapse, Tseng Lianer cultivated Shen power and she had a feeling that the present situation was related to the MO weapon pool. When she thought of the worldly apparition when the little MO treasure cut had been forged, she didn't feel any urgency. It's fine. Bean Sprout was extremely panicked, but Tseng Lianer did not care. Ague was completely unresponsive. The only one that seemed slightly normal was Qinghua Shui. However, Qinghua Shui's expression only changed slightly at the start before she quickly recovered. Tseng Lianer glanced at Qinghua Shui and felt slightly surprised by her calmness. While she was weak, her mental fortitude was pretty good. At this time, inside the Heaven-tier MO weapon pool, it was a completely different scene. Chapter 712, The Continuation of Explosive Weapon Style, 2. When Zwa Mo opened his eyes, he jumped in fright at the scene in front of him. The MO weapon pool was now a water pillar that was hundreds of zhang tall like a twister. The pillar of water was spinning rapidly, ice and frigid air spreading outwards. The ground around the MO weapon pool was covered in a thick layer of ice. Within the pillar of water, 10 lights of different colors floated up and down like 10 fairies. When he looked, Zwa Mo was astounded. This water pillar was formed from hundreds of thousands of tiny water currents. These currents contained great power, and when they gathered together like now, they were like hundreds of thousands of little ice flies that tightly swarmed around the 10 balls of light and ground against them. The 10 MO weapon rudiments were completely different than before Zwa Mo had entered his meditation. What was most evident was that they had shrunk by about 1/3 their size, and the light around them had become purer. It was clear that their quality had increased. Zwa Mo had used the cold flows in the underground Nether River to refine the MO weapon rudiments, but he hadn't expected that refining the 10 MO weapon rudiments in one MO weapon pool would create such a disturbance. He focused on the 10 MO weapon rudiments. It was the first time he had encountered such an astounding scene and he didn't dare to be inattentive at all. When the light from the 10 balls within the pillar of water started to turn softer, Zhuemo knew that it was almost time. The impurities in the MO weapon rudiments were almost all cleaned out, and so the MO weapon rudiments' response to the icy currents were gradually getting weaker. He glanced away from the water pillar and then Zhuemo flashed to appear outside the MO weapon pool. Have the materials been prepared? Coming out of the MO weapon pool, he found the chaotic scene outside and was startled. But the quickly understood what had happened. He looked towards the underground Nether River. As he expected, the water height of the underground Nether River was dozens of zhang lower than when he entered. The 10 MO weapon rudiments had taken almost all of the power of the underground Nether River. It was not strange for such a disturbance to occur. But he didn't have the time to attend to that. All of his attention was on the 10 MO weapon rudiments he was crafting. The 10 MO weapon rudiments had taken in the great majority of the underground Nether River's power, and they were starting to take form. If he could succeed, the level of these 10 MO weapons would reach an astounding level. But if he wasn't careful, all of his work would be for nothing and these 10 MO weapons would be ruined. Even Zhuemo didn't dare to slack off at this time. When Bean Sprout suddenly heard Zhuemo's voice, he shook and jumped up from the ground. They have been prepared. When Zhuemo finished asking, he had noticed the mountain of materials piled up and those extra materials, one's worth entire cities as well. He was slightly surprised, but at such an urgent time, he did not inquire further. His figure flashed and then he appeared around the pile of materials. In a blink, the small mountain disappeared, and so did Zhuemo. Many people had seen Zhuemo's sudden appearance. Their minds moved and then they looked at the guards around the MO weapon pool. None of them had moved. Then they looked at the chaotic passageway. Some people's courage momentarily grew, but they quickly regained their senses. The chaotic situation was lessened slightly. Zhuemo's appearance eased much of Bean Sprout's worries. He was full of awe towards Zhuemo. As expected of Grandmaster. He wouldn't lose his composure even if the mountains were crashing down on top of them. Grandmaster once again went back to his MO weapon forging. Just this mentality far surpassed many MO weapon masters. This was probably the reason that Grandmaster was able to become a Grandmaster. Bean Sprout motivated himself inside. In comparison, the guards from Rare Artifacts Hall changed expression minutely, especially the more powerful guard captains. They all had hints of shock in their eyes. Xiao Yunhai had appeared without warning and none of them had even detected it. Also, none of them had been able to lock onto the disappearance of that pile of materials and the departure of Xiao Yunhai. The words floated unconsciously into everyone's mind, unfathomable power. These guards were a close part of Rare Artifacts Hall, and some had even been raised by Rare Artifacts Hall. Their loyalty to Rare Artifacts Hall was unquestionable. Many of them had dissenting opinions when Rare Artifact Hall's higher-ups had been so flamboyant, especially as the MO weapon masters had continued to leave. This had increased their worries. But their loyalty towards Rare Artifacts Hall meant that they faithfully completed the orders, even ones that they did not agree with. Just like everyone else, they were worried that if Xiao Yunhai failed in such a public way, then Rare Artifacts Hall would become the biggest joke. All of their impressions of Xiao Yunhai were from the mirages and the rumors. Yet when they truly faced Xiao Yunhai's cool gaze and the almost tangible pressure he gave off caused them to stop breathing. Shocked, their mood became much better. Such a person would not just be a boaster. So strong. A guard of Rare Artifacts Hall couldn't help but gasp in a low voice. Every person around him had shocked expressions. The guard captains exchanged looks, and saw the shock in each other's eyes. The power that Zhuemo showed far surpassed their imaginations. Was this guy really a MO weapon master? Some imperceptible hum sounded among the chaotic crowds. Qin Ming's gaze focused slightly as he said in a surprised voice, "I can't seem to get the exact measure of this Xiao Yunhai's strength." Beside him, Zhong Wentian and Tang Chen's expression were also slightly grave. "Qin Ming, a marshal, couldn't see the scope of the other's power, this itself was a problem. Xiao Yunhai was not simple. Zhong Wentian suddenly closed his eyes. A moment later, he opened them suddenly. The underground nether river. The other two heard this, and they turned to look at the underground nether river. Surprise rose in the eyes of the duo. The underground nether river that was usually vast was now so depleted of water that the river floor could be seen. This is... Tang Chen murmured. Buzhou City was his territory, and he was extremely familiar with the underground nether river. The water was always plentiful, and there had never been a situation where the water level would drop. Earth MO weapon. Tang Chen seemed to think of something, and his pupils contracted as he gasped. Qin Ming and Zhong Wentian's bodies shook slightly and expressions of disbelief rose onto their faces. Such a powerful Xiao Yunhai. Such terrifying vibrations. Feng Xingzi stood high up on a protruding rock, as he looked down. His expression changed. Ji Liyu was deeply astounded by the scene in front of her. She had seen the enormous change in the underground nether river just now. The underground nether river that was dozens of li wide was like a silent beast. When it moved, you would be able to feel its terrifying power. It may not be Xiao Yunhai. Ji Liu couldn't help but argue. She really lacked any good feelings about that person. I feel its presence, Feng Xinzi did not turn his face and said coolly. What presence? Ji Liu stilled. The presence of a powerful MO weapon. It is taking form. Eyes closed, Feng Xinzi seemed to be speaking to himself. He was not as calm inside as he appeared. Xiao Yunhai had given him too many surprises. Opening his eyes, his gaze suddenly swept across Qinghua Shui outside the MO weapon pool with a nervous expression. A thoughtful smile came onto his lips. It was time for Darren to have a discussion with the Blue Flower family. Yet what flashed through his mind was Xiao Yunhai's ghostly way of movement. At a shaded spot high up beside the underground nether river, the youth raised his head and stopped eating the blood grapes. He said thoughtfully, now I seem to believe somewhat that this person can forge a Sky Missouri weapon. You believe even more that he is the crux for finding Xiao Mo Gu. A wizened voice suddenly came. It was that old man dressed in rags. The youth seemed to have known the old man was there already. He was not surprised and giggled, yes, if he can forge Sky Missouri weapons, he can repair them. However, there are many people targeting him. The old man grinned, revealing his yellowed teeth with missing gaps. I don't know about the future, but right now, the Mo Shin Temple possesses the strongest Shin power, the youth said casually. Then his tone changed, and he said mirthfully, of course, that is except for you, elder. This old man can't deal with the three of you. The old man waved his hand. However, Kun Luan and Tian Huan have found some ways. With their foundation, it would be fast for them to catch up. You have to be careful. The youth said with an easy expression. It is not so easy, we worked for many generations and have just reached the doorway. There are still many shortcomings with our method. Kun Luan, Tian Huan, the others, they will quickly find, TSK, that it is not so easy. That's true, the old man nodded when he heard this and said. The youth's tone changed. Of course, there are exceptions, like Xiao Mo Gu. This guy is a Shin power cultivation genius. They will quickly find Xiao Mo Gu's value. But at that time, I want to see how much regret they feel, Xiao Mo Gu. An imperceptible light flashed through the old man's eyes. How so? There are no detrimental effects. We found that this guy doesn't just progress rapidly, there are no side effects. The youth put down the blood grapes again, tilted his head, and said gravely. If Elder works with us, we can share everything. No side effects. Really? The old man had an expression of disbelief. When Xiao Mo Gu next appears, Elder, you will know. The youth laughed and then said pointedly, for Xiao Mo Gu, the Mo Shin Temple is willing to pay everything. While this old man was there last time, you didn't have such determination last time. The old man was puzzled. The youth spread his hands. At that time, we still hadn't discovered find Xiao Mo guess benefit. Suddenly, the two seemed to detect something at the same time. They stopped their discussion and looked at the Mo weapon pool. The youth instinctively straightened. He held the blood grapes in his hand but forgot to move them to his mouth. He murmured, "It's starting." Chapter 713, The Continuation of the Explosive Weapons Style. 3. When a material was tossed into the pillar of water, it would be ground to powder by the rapidly spinning water pillar and then disappear without a trace. Zhuo Mo's expression was solemn and his gaze was focused. Every material would light up on his hand. This was what would occur after the unique traits of the material were activated. If any other MO weapon masters were present, they would find to their surprise that even the lowest grade materials would light up dimly on Zhuo Mo's hands. In the common knowledge of MO weapon masters, materials like this could not light up. The pillar of water was like a roaring dragon that twisted its enormous body and caused people to feel the astounding power it contained. The 10 balls of light floated and sank in the water pillar. But Zhuo Mo's eyes could see countless currents of different colors burrowing into the 10 lights. Every rainbow flow that was hard to see with the naked light was the essence of the material. As they flowed into the balls of light, the lights would become brighter. Zhuo Mo carefully controlled the rhythm of adding materials. The mountain of materials next to him was vanishing at an astounding rate. The light in the pillar of water was more than 10 times as intense as before. Even the Jinji that Zhuo Mo had set up were unable to completely block these lights. Bean Sprout's mouth was gaping as he looked at the Mo weapon pool. 5 colored rays of light were like a beam that stabbed out of the Mo weapon pool. Tsing Lianer's reaction was fast. Her expression changed slightly, she grabbed hold of Bean Sprout as she pushed off and then moved Ten Zhang back. When the light from the Mo weapon pool touched the ground, a 6 zhang gap was cut like the ground was tofu. Agui, Tsing Lianer, and Qinghua Shui had all simultaneously retreated in unspoken agreement. The guards also managed to react. Their expression changed. They hurriedly put the gold boxes on their backs and moved back. Pew pew pew. The Mo weapon pool surroundings were immediately covered in countless gullies. These deep furrows crisscrossed and were heart-stopping to see. The crowd that had seen this immediately became restless. These people looked with shock at these scar-like furrows. These furrows were not of the same length nor the same depth. Some were covered in frost, others with their edges melted smooth as glass, and others seemed to be chewed up by countless mice. All of them were different. What Mo weapon would possess so many characteristics? People were both shocked and speculative. The heaven-tier Mo weapon pool that was giving off light at this time seemed to predict the extraordinary nature of the Mo weapon that was about to form. Some with nimble thoughts thought of the Sky Snake 10 manifestation pike that Xiao Yunhai had forged previously. Was this a Mo weapon similar to that? The Mo that were strong were even more shocked and anxious. They could feel the destructive power continued in those seemingly beautiful lights even more clearly. If the light was already also so domineering and powerful, then the Mo weapons. They didn't dare to imagine it. The most excited and expectant were the guards from Rare Artifacts Hall. While shocked, all of them had joyful expressions. Based on the noise that was occurring now, the Mo weapon that was taking form would definitely be extraordinary. It could possibly be an Earth Mo weapon. This Earth Mo weapon was for Rare Artifact Hall, who had been forced to the precipice and gamble everything, a sword of light that tore apart the darkness. Tang Chen looked at the light. After his shock, his expression became more complicated. The disturbance and noise in front of him all proved Xiao Yunhai's extraordinariness. If Xiao Yunhai once again made an Earth Mo weapon, then his reputation was enough to push him to become one of the top people of the Mo territories. Xiao Yunhai's potential surpassed Tang Chen's predictions. He had not hesitated to use a Mo weapon grandmaster as a lure for Xiao Mo Gu. But at this time, he felt a thread of regret. Qin Ming glanced at him and knew what he was thinking. Qin Ming comforted, even if it is an earth mo weapon, it is not much. Shen power is the most important. Tang Chen became alert. He took a deep breath, nodded and said, "You are right, Shen power is the most important." The hesitation in his eyes was swept away and they became determined again. He was a marshal, and his mind was strong. It could not be so easily swayed. He looked hard at the Heaven Tier Mo weapon pool. This Xiao Yunhai was able to cause his mind to waver, his abilities were great. Zhong Wentian suddenly spoke, "Why do I feel it doesn't seem like one Mo weapon?" "Not like one Mo weapon." Qin Ming stilled. Zhong Wentian looked like a rough man, but in terms of sensitivity, he was the strongest of the three. "Maybe it is another Earth Mo weapon like the Sky Snake 10 Manifestation Pike," Tang Chen said. Zhong Wentian did not speak, but his eyes were filled with shock and puzzlement. This Xiao Yunhai is a genius. The Mo Shen Temple youth's gaze changed as he looked closely at the Heaven Tier Mo weapon pool in the distance. The old man said dryly, "Now you have a fondness for talent." The old man couldn't resist looking back, and he was shocked inside. The era of Shen power is about to come, that means the era of Shen device is about to also come. The youth lost all of his casualness, and he seemed to murmur to himself. "Don't you feel that this Xiao Yunhai might be able to forge a Shen device?" An imperceptible contempt flashed at the corner of the old man's lips before disappearing. "Shen device? Ha! You are thinking too much. To regain Shen power, just how many years have we spent? The era of Shen power, no one knows when we will enter it. As for Shen devices, who has even seen one before? We haven't ever seen one, how can we make one?" The Mo Shen Temple youth immediately recovered his usual cheer. "Then, elder, don't compete with us at that time." The old man gave a cunning smile. "I can't do that." This old man still understands the value of buying low and then selling high later. "I will definitely participate. At that time, this old man will give it to whoever gives the highest price." The Mo Shen Temple youth felt a headache. This old man wasn't moved by anything, but his origins were mysterious and he was almost ridiculously powerful. But the change in the Heaven Tier Mo weapon pool quickly interrupted his random thoughts. When the last material was placed into the pool, the pillar of water suddenly stopped spinning. The 10 balls of light suddenly released blinding light like 10 suns that people could not easily look at. The clothing Zhua Mo wore melted like snow under a strong sun. Zhua Mo was astounded. He had picked the clothing casually in order to disguise himself, but because he had enough mabe, and he had the label of Grandmaster, the clothing he had picked were all expensive and their defensive abilities were outstanding. Yet the clothing couldn't stop the lights for a moment. It was possible to see the power of these lights. When the lights shone on Zhua Mo, he only felt warm and lazy, and nothing else. This was enough for him to marvel, but this time wasn't the time to marvel. Zhua Mo refocused, and walked in a circle around the pillar of water to activate the Mo matrices he had already prepared. Dark green Mo matrices lit up around the pool. These Mo matrices were extremely complex. Each Mo matrix was thin and exquisite, complex, and layered as they spread out. The still pillar of water suddenly shook. Immediately after, a roar came from under the ground. At the same time, 6 spots on the ground around the pool collapsed to form 6 holes that were about 6 xiang in diameter. They were so deep the bottom couldn't be seen. The roar had come from the 6 deep holes. The vibrations of the ground grew even stronger as though some monster was about to erupt. Even Zhua Mo had a grave expression. The spells on his hands flowed towards the pillar of water. When the light of these spells touched the pillar of water, they would disappear. With every spell, a Mo weapon within the pillar of water would gain an extra seal script. Zhua Mo's expression was solemn. There were countless tiny currents around him that seemed to form spheres of energy that spun rapidly. At this time, Zhua Mo did not hold anything back and all of his powerful presence was exposed. Suddenly, 6 crimson dragons of fire flew into the air from the 6 holes and leapt for the pillar of water. This was the scorching hot lava from deep underground, and it was the fire method of the Shouja that Zhuemo had merged in. 6 Yang Cauldron Method. In this moment, Zhuemo's eyes seemed to light up. The dark gold sun matrices floated into his eyes. There was no emotion on his face as though he was a deity. Without any hesitation, light spun on his hands. The sun shin power suddenly gathered. His fingers drew in the air, and the gold streaks followed his fingers and stopped in the air. Zhuemo's fingers moved extremely slowly and it looked as though it took great effort. He was like a bow that had been pulled to its limits. A profound and hard to describe ancient seal script slowly formed. This seal script had been recorded in the golden leaf, and Zhuemo was just barely able to use it. When the last stroke formed, the seal script disappeared into a handful of golden lights that entered the pillar of water. When the golden lights entered the pillar of water, it started to spin rapidly, and the suction of the water pillar suddenly increased. Boom boom boom. The underground nether river shook again, and the underwater currents moved. The water height was decreasing at an astounding rate. As the 6 fire pillars exploded, the crimson lava became dark red, and the heat was multiple times what it was before. Very soon, the dark red lava became a burning white. Zhuemo showed slight joy. The burning white lava was the earth core lava at the core of the earth. It was hundreds of times as strong as normal lava. The pillars of fire were like dragons and intertwined to become a cauldron. The 6 pillars of white fire were like 6 dragons that coiled around the pillar of water and crept up. The energy of the ice and the energy of the earth fire were like countless tentacles crisscrossing. In the sky, they formed a complex blue and white pattern. If one looked closely, they find that there were MO matrices in this complete pattern and also seal scripts. The white and blue pattern seemed to have put a woven net around the pillar of water and fire. It caused it to appear beautiful. Yet even Zhuemo who had created it underestimated its power. Chapter 714, A God's Descent. The entire underground complex was trembling, large pieces of rock dislodging from the cave walls above them. It seemed to be like the apocalypse, yet all those people that choose to remain were experts. They skillfully sidestepped the falling debris as they watched everything. Everyone's gazes were locked onto the heaven tier MO weapon pool. While they could not see the situation inside due to the layers of Jinji, they could clearly feel how great and terrifying the power being created was inside. It was like an ancient monster slowly awakening from its deep slumber. The guard leader of Rare Artifacts Hall felt his heart shudder. He was standing very close to the MO weapon pool, and this feeling of power grew even stronger. He had a strong feeling that the MO weapon taking form in the MO weapon pool was filled with danger. Retreat! Everyone, retreat, he shouted at the top of his lungs. The other guards stared at each other, and hesitated. The guard leader's orders were in opposition to the orders from the higher-ups, but the status of the guard leader was extremely high in Rare Artifacts Hall and he had the final say on outside matters. All of you, retreat! The guard leader shouted angrily. The hesitation on the faces of the other guards swept away. They packed up the dark gold boxes on the ground and retreated like the tide. Just as they retreated out 50 zhang, the MO weapon pool rang out, and a thick blue and white pillar of light shot into the sky. Boom boom boom. The pillar of light was 10 zhang thick, and when it touched the rock overhead, the MO matrices that covered the rock layer disappeared like paper mache. The hard rock was cut like soft tofu in by the pillar of light. The pillar of light penetrated the thick rock layer without any effort. Boom boom boom. The ground shook. The crowds on the streets had astounded expressions as they flew into the sky. What happened? Is it an earthquake? Just as they started a discussion, a thick blue and white pillar of light suddenly erupted from the ground and entered the sky. The pillar of light stabbed into the cloud layer. Boom boom boom. The cloud layer seemed to be moved by an invisible hand. The clouds from all directions started to gather rapidly towards the pillar of light. In a flash, the cloud layer became black and heavy. The sky started to darken at a visible rate. Only that thick pillar of blue and white light became even brighter and eye-catching. The thick inky black clouds were so heavy they were suffocating. A wild wind rose, and swept up sand and rock. People looked at the sky in fear. Suddenly, a bright and thick bolt of lightning exploded in the sky. Boom-o-moum. The thunder seemed to explode in people's minds. Those that were less courageous almost dropped out of the sky. Plop plop, thick bean-sized droplets of rain poured down. In this moment, a wild wind and storm suddenly started gusting. The sky and earth was deluged in a heavy rain that impeded their vision. Silver snakes danced above their heads, and the power of the world was displayed. The terrified crowd did not have any attention to spare to marvel at the power of the world. Their gazes were all fixed in fear at the blinding blue and white pillar of light. Inside the blue and white pillar of white, Zhuo-mo was disheveled. This was the first time he had merged Mo matrices and seal scripts together so perfectly, yet the power of the two together surpassed his imagination. When the blue and white Mo matrices lit up, he had a bad feeling, but the light that charged upwards had immediately swallowed him. The remnants of his clothing turned to ash. As his expression changed drastically, the gray dragon claw bracelet on his wrist suddenly lit up with a faint blood-colored tinge. This layer of blood suddenly shot out and wrapped around Zhuo-mo like a ball of fire. The blue and white pillar of light was vicious, but it could not defeat the thin layer of blood. The anti-dragon claw. Zhuo-mo was astounded. Ever since the anti-dragon claw had been heavily damaged the last time he used it, it had lost its shine and its power. Its unusual state at this time caused Zhuo-mo's heart to beat uncontrollably. Zhuo-mo looked down. There seemed to be even brighter threads of blood mist wrapped around his hand. They were like tiny blood dragons that wrapped around him. Suddenly, a handful of the blood mist rose, and the dragon raised its head. Roar! A dragon's roar sounded in Zhuo-mo's mind without warning. The blood mist opened, like a dragon stretching its great maw and howling angrily. The ball of light that was closest to Zhuo-mo immediately shook and then started to fly shakily towards Zhuo-mo. This was... Zhuo-mo gaped at this scene. Before he could react, the blood mist on his wrist acted like a real dragon and accurately struck the ball of light floating over. When the blood mist hit the light ball, it turned into a ball of bloody mist and tightly surrounded the ball of light. The ball of light continued to struggle in the bloody mist, but its struggles quickly weakened until it became motionless. The blood mist roiled as it swallowed the ball of light. The blood mist soon became denser, and there was some more light on the dragon claw bracelet on Zhuo-mo's wrist. After feeding, the blood mist became multiple times stronger and immediately headed to another ball of light. The interior of the pillar of light turned to chaos. The remaining 9 balls of light flew frantically to avoid this terrifying ball of blood mist. These balls of light were intelligent, and nimble in movement. The blood mist leapt around for a while but didn't manage to get even one. Suddenly, the blood mist stopped and formed into a blurry dragon's head. It suddenly opened its mouth and gave a furious roar. Roar! The dragon's roar exploded in Zhuo-mo's mind. His mind immediately blanked. The 9 balls of light that had been fleeing all simultaneously froze. The blood mist immediately took this chance and swallowed another ball of light. The dragon claw bracelet on Zhuo-mo's hand became even brighter. At this time, a dark gold little figure suddenly appeared within the pillar of light. A mirror image of Zhuo-mo, it was the black gold seal soldier. He greedily licked his lips. He suddenly lunged at a ball of light and tried to chomp on it with his mouth. His body was small to begin with, and when he consumed the ball of light, his hands were locked around the ball of light as his legs kicked in the air. He clearly was using all of his strength. The blood mist acted just as it had before and swallowed another 3 balls of light before contently flicking its tail and burrowing back into the dragon claw bracelet. The dragon claw on Zhuo-mo's wrist had changed from its withered state. It became lifelike, its flesh and muscles filled out, and its claws crimson red. A feeling rose in Zuomo's mind. He was able to discern the thoughts that the dragon claw was passing to him. The efficiency of the black gold seal soldier was much lower. He only had time to chew on 2 balls of light. He looked yearningly at the remaining balls of light. He then carefully looked at Zuomo. Taking advantage of the fact that Zuomo was distracted, he escaped burrowing back into the ring. Zuomo gaped at everything that had occurred. He hadn't expected that the anti-dragon claw and the black gold seal soldier would come out midway during crafting, and before he could get a grasp of the situation, he lost half of his balls of light. The anti-dragon claw looked more energetic, but it had not recovered to its past state. The black gold seal soldier started to sleep again. Each ball of light was an Earth MO weapon. In a flash, there were 5 fewer Earth MO weapons. 5 Earth MO weapons. Realizing this after the fact, Zuomo's mind exploded. How many Mabe was that? He seemed to see an ocean of Mabe disappearing in a flash. Anger rose. There was nothing more hateful than stealing Jingshi and Mabe from GE. Zuomo's eyes filled with blood, an extremely dangerous presence coming off him. The remaining 5 balls of light trembled like the sheep trembling under the claws and fangs of a demon king. Yet the last bit of remaining reason suppressed Zuomo's anger. After losing 5 of the balls of light, the concentration of power in the blue pillar of light skyrocketed. The forging of the MO weapons had reached the most important step. If he was the least bit careless, it would all be for nothing. The blue pillar of light was a Dan cauldron made from the earth fire and the cold currents. Zuomo took a deep breath and, with the anger suppressed inside, he furiously shot Mo matrices into the 5 MO weapons. With every Mo matrix that was put into the balls of light, there would be a thread of pure earth fire and cold current that would burrow into the ball of light. Yet, stimulated by the disappearance of an astounding amount of Mabe, Zuomo clearly was sent into a rage, and the MO matrices that left his hands became more and more ridiculous. With the first ball of light, he was still trying to control himself, and the MO matrices he had used were within the range of normality. By the last ball of light, his restraint was completely gone. The MO matrices rained down like a waterfall, and there were numerous complex seal scripts mixed within them. On this last MO weapon, he smashed MO matrices and seal scripts for 2 hours. He seemed to vent his anger into this ball of light. The balls of light trembled, the anti-dragon claw was docile, and the black gold seal soldier was silent. When an astounding amount of cold currents and earth fire flooded into the last ball of light, the ball of light seemed as though it would burst at any moment. Only now did Zuomo suddenly recover his calm and jumped in fright. The last ball of light was twice the size of the other 4 balls of light. It was like an overinflated balloon that swayed. Zuomo immediately felt his scalp prickle. If this guy exploded. The result caused him to shudder. He saw this and hurriedly stopped. The rudiments within the 5 balls of light were like 5 balls of metal liquid. They started to take shape. Zuomo widened his eyes and didn't dare to miss even a detail. Seeing the growth of these rudiments was very beneficial for him. A 3-part weapon, sword, saber, and shield combo, a blood-colored spear with an icicle tassel, a sun and moon chakram, a pair of 13 chain-linked whips. Only the largest ball constantly changed but did not fully take form. It was like a ball of liquid metal with MO matrices and seal scripts constantly flowing on it. Zuomo widened his eyes to look closely but felt dizzy. He was astounded, and his anticipation of this MO weapon grew slightly higher. 12 whole hours. An unexpected MO weapon finally took form, a set of battle armor. The icy blue battle armor had beautiful curves. Its dark red helm had a murderous appearance. Every armor piece were thin and ice blue. If one looked closely, they would see that every scale was covered in countless complex and beautiful lines. There was a pair of snowy white wings attached to the back that gave it an aura of holiness. Even Zuomo, who had forged countless treasures, couldn't help but be enchanted by this set of battle armor. When the battle armor took form, the entire pillar of light suddenly grew. Zhuo felt a great power suddenly erupt from under the ground. Before he could react, he was like a little stone that was shot out. He shot upwards, and when he passed by the 5mo weapons, the 5mo weapons turned into 5 streaks of light that tightly spun around him. When he passed through the dozens of li of rock and flew out of the earth into the sky, everyone in Buzhou City couldn't help but raise their heads. Ah! Zhuo left a long cry tailing after him. He had never flown so high before. Through the cloud layer, through the atmosphere, Zhuo was above the clouds and didn't know how long he flew for. Suddenly, he felt his body start to fall. He panicked even more, and an even more piteous wail started. Ah! In a panic, Zhuo grabbed the battle armor spinning around him. Zhuo only had one though in his mind. The armor had wings. At this time, the black clouds that filled the sky suddenly dissipated. A blinding light suddenly shone out from the thick cloud layer. Within this great beam of light, under the upraised gazes from all of Buzhou City, a glittering perfect figure with large snowy wings and radiating sparks, surrounded by 4 glowing mo weapons, dove down like a meteor. A shocking hum filled the air. Boom! The legs wrapped in icy blue armor were slightly bent as they heavily stepped onto the ground. Air currents on the ground carried dust and soil as they moved outwards. The snowy white wings moved fanned upwards and outwards, and Zhuo seemed to be a statue. Pew 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 pew. 4 streaks of light heavily embedded themselves into the ground around him. The 4mo weapons showed their true appearance with a murderous air. Everyone suddenly felt the same words appear in their minds, a god's descent to earth. Chapter 715, The Monarch of Mo Weapons. Chuan looked warily around. He found there were 4 people close in strength to him in this group of people. Those flickering gazes were filled with faint danger and great wariness. It was crowded inside the Sky Shark. The Sky Shark that used to transport only a few hundred people now was forced to hold over 2,020 people. The overcrowding could be imagined. However, no one dared to complain. This was a Sky Shark that had been temporarily added to the route. There were more than 300 Sky Sharks like this. All of them had one destination, Buzhou City. Yet even with the addition of 300 Sky Sharks and their massive carrying capacity was not able to satisfy the crazy flow of people. Each Sky Shark was filled to capacity with people. All the privileges of the private yards and first-class residences were revoked. Each corner was filled with people. But even in such terrible conditions, people still paid twice the usual cost for a ticket. Chuan had good luck. He had bought a shark ticket using a connection from his friend to board this Sky Shark. Many more people had to travel day and night, on small mo steeds, over mountains and rivers to head to Buzhou City. They formed groups like herds of ants that moved towards Buzhou City tirelessly. The present mo territories was boiling because of a miracle. For Earth mo weapons and a Super mo weapon of unclear grade had been created, Grandmaster Xiao Yunhai had astounded the world. News of this incomprehensible miracle immediately spread to every corner of the mo territories. Before this, no mo weapon Grandmaster had been able to forge 2 Earth mo weapons at once, never. 4 Earth mo weapons. Yes, 4 Earth mo weapons. All 4 of them had been examined by Rare Artifacts Hall and they were all Earth mo weapons of great quality. After obtaining the agreement of the Grandmaster, Rare Artifacts Hall immediately publicized the detailed descriptions of these 4 Earth mo weapons. In a brief amount of time, the information spread to the rest of the world like lightning. The information on these 4 Earth mo weapons were made public was like pouring hot water into a pot of boiling oil. Ice Blood 3 Hound Seat was comprised of 3 mo weapons, a saber, a sword, and a shield. This was a very rare set. The saber and the sword were both long and narrow. The saber was dark red, and its channels flowed like rivers. The sword was icy blue, sharp, and transparent like a sword made from crystalline ice. The shield was an buckler shield. It was completely black and had 5 irregularly placed stars on it. Blue Horsefly was the only long-range weapon among the 4 MO weapons. It was a blood spear, and had a tassel made from 12 ice blue crystals. What was even more wondrous was the body of the spear. The crimson-red spear seemed to be soaked in fresh blood, yet when one gripped the spear, they would find that the body was made from countless minuscule flows of blood. These blood-colored flows would shift slightly as though they were alive. Dark clearly chakrams were a pair of larger and smaller chakrams. The large one was dark gold, and had a fiery pattern. When it was held in the hand, it was like holding a ball of fire. The smaller chakram was snowy white and covered in faint patterns of the moon, almost weightless in the hand. When the 2 chakrams were placed close together, they would attract each other and slowly spin. 13 pillars was a pair of whips, each with 13 links. The pair of whips were extremely heavy. With every flick of the whip, thunder and wind would sound. When the 2 whips danced together, it could cause thunder to manifest in the sky. If one was to nurture them in storm clouds, they would become even more powerful. This was an extremely rare Earth MO weapon with great power. All 4 Earth MO weapons were first class. When Rare Artifacts Hall publicized them, the other MO weapon masters started to judge them, but every one of them placed them in the top 50 of Earth MO weapons. Other than the MO Weapon Master Association, which put all 4 Earth MO weapons at the very bottom. However, no one paid attention to the MO Weapon Master Association's assessment. Everyone thought of the promise that Xiao Yunhai had given before. 1 Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass could be used to trade for an Earth MO weapon. Many people beat their chests and stomped their feet. Why didn't they believe this before? Right now, on the black market, the price of a Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass had risen to a ridiculous level, and there was no supply. Chuan had Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass. He was just a half step away from martial level. Owning an Earth MO weapon was something that he had dreamed about. Even if he became a martial, obtaining one would take a very long time. But no matter which method he tried, he hadn't managed to obtain an Earth MO weapon. Every Earth MO weapon was treasured by their master, and would not be easily given to others. So when he had heard Xiao Yunhai's promise, he didn't believe it, but he had held some hope. He tried his best to get a Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass. When the 4 Earth MO weapons came into the world, he became excited and immediately started to head for Buzhou City. On the road, he was extremely careful, especially when he found there were others that were close in power to him. These people were mostly MO like Chuan that were on their own. They were not dragged down by their families, nor did they rely on any faction. They had strong desires for Earth MO weapons. Usually, Earth MO weapons were bought out by the major factions, and they would not go onto the market. They never had any chances. For them, Buzhou City was a 1 in 1,000 chance. Chuan couldn't help but become nervous. Among those traveling with him, would the 4 that were close in power to him also have Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass? For experts of his level, other than Earth MO weapons, they would be able to obtain other treasures if they tried, like the Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass. Chuan laughed inwardly. He hadn't thought that there would be a day that he would feel nervous. He had always felt that he would be able to calmly face whatever happened. He hadn't thought that he would lose his calm today. But, in the end, he was a strong MO. His mind was strong and he quickly adjusted. Having quieted the restlessness in his heart, Chuan was immediately listened in on the exchange between the surrounding MO weapon masters. Grandmaster Xiao Yunhai is definitely the best grandmaster of this era. No, he is the best grandmaster of all time. A MO weapon master dressed in blue robes said with an excited expression. Strangely, no one objected to his words. It really is really too astounding, another MO weapon master couldn't help but say. When he said this, there was incredulity mixed on his face with shock and reverence. It was a complicated expression. Everyone had discussed this title many times in the recent while. They were not the only ones. Right now, all of the MO territories couldn't wait to present the title of Best MO Weapon Grandmaster to Xiao Yunhai. Other than the strong objections from the MO Weapon Master Association, no one else felt that this was sudden and inappropriate. Even many people inside the MO Weapon Master Association agreed, but due to the stern attitudes of the Grandmasters leading them, they didn't dare to publicly state their opinions. But more and more factions supported this, thusly more and more commentary would use appellations of respect such as, the greatest MO Weapon Grandmaster, or, the Grandmaster of Grandmasters, when they discussed Xiao Yunhai. They no longer said that he didn't know his limits, they no longer said that he was arrogant, they no longer said that he was boasting. Countless people departed for Buzhou City to see this Grandmaster that had come out of nowhere and was so strong he could defeat any Grandmaster in history, the strongest Grandmaster. He was like the undoubted monarch of MO Weapon Masters. All the MO Weapon Masters in each MO moved as the news spread. They came from all areas to see this MO Weapon monarch that had never appeared in history before. And that super MO Weapon, why didn't Rare Artifacts Hall publicize its information? The blue-robed MO Weapon Master had a heated gaze of reverence. He said heatedly, surpassing Earth MO weapons, then isn't it a Sky Missouri weapon? It's not a Sky Missouri weapon. A gray-robed youth with a grave expression suddenly spoke. When he spoke, everyone else quieted. He said calmly, I studied the mirage of the MO weapons coming out. That super MO weapon should be the complete set of body armor with wings that Grandmaster was wearing. The gray-robed youth was the most knowledgeable and skilled MO Weapon Master among this group, the others deeply respected them. Even the enthusiastic blue-robed youth believed the gray-robed youth's judgment. He said in puzzlement, what is it if it is not a Sky Missouri weapon? I don't know either, the gray-robed youth shook his head and said, I am going to the MO Weapon Holy Pool to look. I might be able to find some clues. Yes, yes. We have to see the MO Weapon Holy Pool. Everyone nodded. Chuan heard this and couldn't resist saying, sorry to disturb everyone, what is this MO Weapon Holy Pool? He had never heard of a MO Weapon Holy Pool. The blue-robed youth replied first, the MO Weapon Pool where Grandmaster Xiao Yunhai forged the MO weapons. You don't know. This MO Weapon Pool has given birth to 4 Earth MO weapons and that Super MO weapon. For some unknown reason, the MO Weapon Pool has completely crystallized, and all of Grandmaster's preparations have been perfectly preserved. A few days ago, Grandmaster had ordered to allow the public to view the Holy Pool. Chuan finally understood. Another MO Weapon Master said emotionally, I would even crawl to Buzhou City for the opportunity to see the Holy Pool. Chuan immediately recognized a serious problem. Doesn't this mean that more and more people will come to Buzhou City? The gray-robed youth glanced at Chuan and said coolly, no MO Weapon Master will pass on this chance. Barring any accidents, the Holy Pool will become the holy ground for MO Weapon Masters. The other people nodded with similar expressions. Chuan's grimace became even more bitter. In a tightly guarded secret room underground. This is still unable to be assessed. The middle-aged MO shook his head. He had a grimace. His tone was admiring and amazed. This was the 6th time he had gathered various appraisers to judge this unique MO armor. But none were able to determine or guess at its level. These appraisers were all experienced. Each of them had at least 20 years of working experience. But even with so many assessors, they were unable to determine the general level. For this, they had fought countless times, slapped the table, swore at each other, and even fought. However, they were still unable to give an assessment. But they were strangely in agreement on one point, it definitely wasn't a Sky Missouri weapon. Or rather, it was completely different than any other Sky Missouri weapon in history. Every appraiser couldn't bear to allow their gaze to leave this breathtakingly beautiful set of MO armor. It really was too beautiful. It had many wondrous and incomprehensible parts. These wondrous traits were different than any MO weapon that these appraisers had seen before. What really was this? All of their puzzled gazes focused on Zuemo. Zuemo thought for a moment before saying, then it will be the angel device raiment. A good name, the middle-aged Mo praised, but his expression was slightly strange. Zhuo Mo glanced at the middle-aged Mo. The other had done everything to help him. While there were other reasons, it was clear the two were in alliance at the moment. He said, pick one of the 4 Earth Mo weapons. The remaining 3 will be traded for the reverse shadow soul silkgrass. The middle-aged Mo was overjoyed and hurriedly said, I want, blue horsefly. Zhuo Mo smiled and said, you have good eyes. Blue horsefly was the only long-range weapon among all 4 Earth Mo weapons. These 4 Mo weapons all had a unique characteristic, they all had 2 attributes. This was because they had been forged using earth fire and the cold currents of the underground Nether River. Blue horsefly was the only single-piece Mo weapon of the group. While it was a single item, it had both fire and ice attributes, and was the best among the 4 Mo weapons. The middle-aged Mo smiled freely, however, I will not take this from you for free. That batch of materials was valued at just 2 billion mabe, it is far below the worth of this. Since the materials in the dark gold boxes have been delivered, it will be troublesome to return them, so I will gift them all to Grandmaster. If Grandmaster has any new works, please give 1 or 2 to my rare artifacts hall. Zhuo Mo changed expression. Every one of the materials in the dark gold boxes were rare, and each was of equivalent value to cities. The other was so generous to give all of them to him. This present was astounding. Zhuo Mo thought and then said, if I have new works in the future, you can have the first choice of 2 for free. The middle-aged Mo smiled brightly. Many thanks, Grandmaster, many thanks. The materials had been accumulated by Rare Artifacts Hall over time, and he also felt heartache at giving them out. However, it was still profitable exchange if it cemented their relationship with the strongest Mo weapon master. He had not thought that Zhuo Mo would actually give 2 more Earth Mo weapons. These 2 Earth Mo weapons were more than enough to trade for these materials. Zhuo Mo smiled and said, if I have a need for the help of your hall, bossy, please take care of me. Zhuo Mo had only learned the middle-aged Mo name not long ago. Ian hurriedly said, Grandmaster is too courteous. Grandmaster's reputation is so great right now that no one would dare to offend you. Ian's words were pointed. He had seen the attitude of the Tang family to Zhuo Mo. However, with Zhuo Mo's present fame, the Tang family would not dare to treat him like they did before. Even as a marshal, Tang Chen would not dare to commit such a great crime. With Zhuo Mo's present status, even Tang Chen would have to call him Grandmaster if they met. Tang Chen was a marshal, but he was not the strongest marshal, much less ranking in history. Yet the name Xiao Yunhai had reached an unprecedented height that left all others looking up to him. This was Zhuo Mo's present status. Zhuo Mo smiled unconcernedly. He was wary of Tang Chen, but he did not fear the other. In terms of strength, Ji Zheng, who he killed, was even more powerful. Right now, he just didn't want to cause any waves, and everything could wait until he got the reverse shadow soul silkgrass. Put everything aside, bossy, please spend more effort on the reverse shadow soul silkgrass. Zhuo Mo said. Of course. Of course. Ian hurriedly said. His face was filled with joy. This time, he had gambled rightly. This Mo weapon miracle would leave a great mark on history. And Rare Artifacts Hall that had played such a great role in this event would benefit for many years from this. The 4 Earth Mo weapons were placed in Rare Artifacts Hall, and he would be in complete charge of exchanging the Earth Mo weapons for Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass. Not long in the future, the name of Rare Artifacts Hall would pass into all of the Mo territories. Yet Zhuo Mo, who was only focused on obtaining the Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass, didn't know what kind of whirlwind he had created. Mo Shin Temple. The eyes of the 2 Mo gods were locked onto the mirage on the table. It was the angel device raiment. They had gotten the mirage from other avenues, and the fidelity of the image to the event was high. Every single detail was clear. There was also a segment after on Zhuo Mo landing from the sky. Their expressions were filled with surprise. Without blinking, they had stared at the mirage for a whole night. It is not a Sky Missouri weapon, the rhinoceros mo god rumbled out. There was a rare blush on his calm face, and his excitement could be seen. It is a Shin device. The eldest mo god's gaze didn't move at all. It was possible to hear a thread of insuppressible excitement from his cold tone. On his thin face, the sickle-shaped mark was completely exposed. Shin device? The rhinoceros mo stilled. While that, angel device raiment, was unlike any mo weapon he had seen before, he hadn't thought that it would be a Shin weapon. Old 3 said that the mysterious old man said that Xiao Yunhai might be able to forge Shin devices. I hadn't thought that he would actually forge something so close to a Shin device, the eldest mo god slowly said. The sickle red mark on his face moved and appeared unspeakably terrifying. Close to Shin device, I understand. The rhinoceros mo god's shock lessened slightly and nodded. He could accept this. It is very close. There was surprise and admiration on the eldest mo god's face. He stood and drawled, if a Shin device appears, the era of Shin power will come even more quickly. The rhinoceros mo said gravely, we do not need to change anything. No. The eldest mo god narrowed his eyes and his tone was sharp. We need to quickly resolve our fatal weakness, expand even more quickly to get the most advantage before our enemies have grown up. While their relative power has fallen, they have strong foundations and this means that they will be stronger in the long run. What should we do? The rhinoceros mo gold's expression did not change as he rumbled out a question. We need the angel device raiment, this is the mo weapon that is closest to a Shin device right now. We need to study this. The eldest mo god narrowed his eyes and said methodically, also, if Xiao Yunhai is on our hands, we do not have to worry that Xiao Mo Gu will not come. But this way, wouldn't we make too much of a fuss? The rhinoceros mo god looked at the eldest mo god. His tone was calm. Xiao Yunhai is a star right now, it will be troublesome if we move against him. In the end, we can only have a say in this world based on power, the eldest mo god said coolly. In front of absolute power, everything else is as fragile as paper. The Tang family will have qualms, but we do not need to worry. The eldest mo god said proudly. Zhua Mo did not go out and show off. While he would receive numerous exquisitely crafted invitations every day, he ignored them all. He had gained much this time. Other than his mo weapons crafting ability, he felt as though his spell level had also skyrocketed. Forging was able to increase control of Ling power, so the Xiuzhe that were skilled in forging would usually have outstanding control of Ling power. This could be seen from how many sects mandated forging as an essential class to take. The control of Ling power had always been Zhua Mo's shortcoming, but after forging in this time, and with the Gravestone Oath's boost, he had progressed rapidly. Other than the Earth Mo weapon he gave rare artifacts haul, according to the promise he had given before, he would only be able to get 3 reverse shadow soul silkgrasses. He didn't know if 3 reverse shadow soul silkgrasses would be enough, but he decided to use the time to forge some more Earth Mo weapons to change for more reverse shadow soul silkgrass. Also, he had gained greatly from forging Earth Mo weapons. If he did it again, his Ling power control would go up a level, and his strength would grow stronger. The rare 1,000-year-old collection of rare artifacts haul was on his hand right now. These materials stimulated him, and he kept on having new ideas. The previous forging process had also given him many inspirations, especially that strange, angel device raiment. He had a strong impulse to forge new mo weapons. Chapter 717, The mysterious old man Zhua Mo was optimistic about forging, but the reality of the situation was not so sunny. The water level of the underground Nether River had been drastically lowered, and for the first time, it was lowered almost to the riverbed. The Heaven Tier Mo weapon pool had completely crystallized and it was unusable for forging Mo weapons. On this matter, the party who lost was the Tang family. Zhua Mo had almost dried up the entirety of the underground Nether River, and it would be many years for the Mo weapon pools to recover to their previous state. However, there was no way they could ask for reparations from Zhua Mo. In the eyes of other people, the Tang family had benefited greatly. An endless stream of visitors had caused the underground Nether River to become a tourist spot. It was not so easy for Zhou Mo to find another high-level Mo weapon pool. Also, before he found a new Mo weapon pool, he needed to deal with another problem, the angle device raiment. There were many people who had used all kinds of methods and connections to inform him that they hoped to see the angel device raiment. Look at the background of these people. The Tang family patriarch Tang Cheng, Gongzi Shi, Feng Xinz of the Yao envoys, Ji Liu, Mo god Yoshi Yaku of the Mo Shin temple. Any of them were influential on their own, and what was most unexpected to Zhou Mo was that the Mo Shin temple would send in such a request. Zhou Mo had a deep impression of the great power of the rhinoceros Mo god of the Mo Shin temple. At that time, Zhou Mo finally saw the power of Shin power. Even though he had cultivated Shin power for such a long time, he had never seen such astounding Shin power. It would not be easy for Zhou Mo to refuse any of the requests. Their demand was not outrageous. They only wanted to see the mysterious, angel device raiment. After some thought, Zhou Mo decided to hold a small public demonstration to show off the angel device raiment. There were many parts to the angel device raiment that Zhou Mo had a hard time understanding, and he also hoped that these experts would give him some ideas. Numerous invitations were sent out. Yet what followed surprised Zhou Mo. More requests and inquiries came in. He had to increase the number of invitations. The underground Nether River wasn't the only spot filled with people. All of Buzhou City was filled with people in every corner. It was the first time so many people were visiting Buzhou City since it was built. Unlike the Tang family who was worried about maintaining their control, the other factions were excited. This was such a good opportunity to make money. The busiest and most populous place in Buzhou City was still the Rare Artifacts Hall. If Zhou Mo came to visit the Rare Artifacts Hall again, his jaw would drop in shock. The outer wall of Rare Artifact Hall had been taken down. Other than the heavy jinji that were kept, everything else was cleared out, and there were only 4 crystal shelves inside. There was an Earth Mo weapon floating inside each crystal case. The 4 newly created Earth Mo weapons were like 4 vicious beasts silently hibernating as they showed off their beauty and power. Every Mo that came to visit showed intoxication when they saw these 4 top Mo weapons. The perfect merging of beauty and power. The Mo who revered strength didn't have any immunity towards them. It was the lifelong wish of many people to see the grandeur of the legendary Earth Mo weapons at a close distance. If it wasn't for the heavy jinji on the crystal cases, and the great jinji that curved to cover the entire place, many people would have instinctively reached out. Inhales, swallows, and gasps of shock rang out. Every shopkeeper of Rare Artifacts Hall straightened their backs, their faces covered in professional smiles. They felt peerlessly proud and excited at the scene in front of them. Chuan was among the crowd. His gaze was burning and desirous as it fixated on the 4 Earth Mo weapons. However, what he felt more of was anxiousness. 1 reverse shadow soul silkgrass to trade for an Earth Mo weapon, was this true? Gritting his teeth, he walked in front of a shopkeeper. May I ask if it is possible to trade a reverse shadow soul silkgrass for an Earth Mo weapon now? The shopkeeper, who had a small smile on his face all this time, immediately turned grave. Yes, it can be traded. Sir has a reverse shadow soul silkgrass. The words were heaven to Cui An's ears. He was overjoyed but kept his expression calm. Yes. The shopkeeper did not dare to slight him and hurriedly said, Please come with me. The shopkeeper quickly guided Chuan towards a heavily guarded inner room. The shops surrounding Rare Artifacts Hall had been bought, borrowed, or rented at a high price by Rare Artifacts Hall. An experienced appraiser had been waiting in the room. Chuan took a deep breath and carefully took out the reverse shadow soul silkgrass. The assessor carefully made his assessment. About 15 minutes later, he wiped the fine sweat off his forehead, nodded, and said, It is reverse shadow soul silkgrass, the quality is good, it can be traded. Cui An's heart uncontrollably jumped, and a feeling of great fortune flooded his body and mind. The shopkeeper was also slightly excited when he heard this, but he kept his composure. He said, "Congratulations, sir. Other than blue horsefly, you can choose any of the other three." It was not a surprise that blue horsefly belonged to Rare Artifacts Hall. Blue horsefly had been the only weapon marked with the insignia of Rare Artifacts Hall among the 4 Earth MO weapons displayed. Chuan inhaled deeply and calmed his excitement. "I want the Een Clearly Chakrams." When the Een Clearly Chakrams disappeared suddenly from the crystal cases, the people who had been looking at it immediately gasped. Nearby shopkeepers hurriedly explained. The news that someone had used Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass to trade for the Een Clearly Chakrams spread through the entire city. Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass could be traded for Earth MO weapons. This was true. The world immediately went crazy. Zhuo looked warily at the old man in front of him. A Gue stood woodenly by his side. Tseng Lianer narrowed her eyes as her long sleeve that touched the floor remained still, as though she was prepared to attack at any moment. Zhuo was astounded when the old man had materialized like a ghost. The guard outside was tight, yet the old man had managed to make his way in without being detected. Yet what surprised him was that the old man was looking at a Gue. His gaze was complex, mixed with pity, tenderness, and guilt. Zhuo unconsciously shielded a Gue and faced the old man guardedly. "She has the Undying Shin punishment?" the old man suddenly asked. His eyes were full of a complicated emotion. Zhuo's body suddenly shook and he abruptly raised his head. He asked gravely as his murderousness came out, "Who are you?" The old man ignored Zhuo. His brow creased with slight dissatisfaction. "Haven't you found that her Undying Shin power has a problem?" "The Undying Shin power has a problem?" Zhuo's expression changed slightly as he rushed to hold a Gui's wrist. The purple chain had become even thicker. There seemed to be something that was barely taking form inside a Gui's soul. "What is going on?" Zhuo's tone changed. No matter how he tried, he could not see what was being formed inside a Gui's soul. He was slightly terrified. He could not do anything to the Undying Shin power, and his greatest fear was a problem occurring. And as expected, his greatest fear was occurring. "The Undying Shin punishment has not changed much," the old man mused to himself, other than what?" Zhuo unconsciously blurted out. "Unless she formed the Undying Shin seal." The old man suddenly raised his head. "Yes, it definitely is the Undying Shin seal." Seeing the blankness on Zhuo's face, the old man explained in a cold voice, "The Undying Shin punishment is the cruelest Shin punishment, but it is not without hope. The only solution in legend is to form the Undying Shin seal and search for life in death." "I had not thought the legends were true." "The Undying Shin seal, it definitely is the Undying Shin seal." "So this means that a Gue can break free of the Undying Shin punishment?" Zhuo said joyfully. "It is not so easy." The old man smiled coldly. He looked at Zhuo, narrowed his eyes that dimmed and brightened. His gaze caused Zhuo's hairs to stand on end. He felt a strong feeling of danger and he was on his guard. Suddenly, the old man's expression returned to normal, as though the enmity he had just exuded was an illusion. He said lightly, "The Undying Shin seal is the 1 in 10,000 chance of life in death. While there is the legend, no one knows how it can formed. It is difficult to say whether she has the Undying Shin power or not. Even if she does, the danger she faces far surpasses your imagination. If you have Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass, you may want to try." The old man looked deeply at Zhuo. "You want to know your origins, but it will also help her. Those memories can help her understand her own heart and not get lost in the pain of the Undying Shin punishment." Zhuo seemed to understand. He thought of the peaceful Ague within the purple chains and shook his head. "Ague will not lose herself." The old man stilled slightly when he heard this. His expression quickly recovered and he threw a small bag to Zhuo. "This is scab fragrance, feed it to her, it is also of benefit," the old man said coolly. Don't keep your angel device raiment, it will only bring calamity. Suemo received the little bag but noticed the old man's words. He asked in response, bring calamity? You poked the hornet's nest, the old man said impatiently. Also, no matter what, do not expose your identity as Xiaomo Gu. Suemo's expression changed dramatically. Even Xing Lianer's expression changed and she almost attacked from the side. The other knew his identity as Xiaomo Gu. Suemo's expression wavered and he was shocked inside. The old man glanced at Xing Lianer and then he was clearly unfriendly when he looked at Suemo. So young, but you have many women. Xing Lianer was like a cat who had its tail that was stepped on. Her narrowed eyes immediately froze over. The old man didn't even look at Suemo. He said, the Yao are a good partner to trade with, ask for, reincarnation feather, soul execution Yao light, death thought bead. They are all beneficial for her. If it is Tian Huan, trade for the Tian Huan case. If it is Kun Luan, trade for the Kun Luan sword soul, jade level, and get 3. Shi Xian's, 5-element soul Dan, Xian Kong's, Great Compassion Great Sorrow Life Sutra. The Mo don't have anything good for healing the soul. Suemo was confused but he had a general grasp. He was even more puzzled and couldn't help but ask, what is the angel device raiment? Shin device. Shin device. Suemo's eyes widened. Just close to it. The old man added, do your best. Finishing, the old man disappeared right in front of Suemo's eyes. Suemo and Xing Lianer changed expression. Suemo suddenly thought of a Shin method from the ancient era called the Shin Void Pass. Shin power. The old man cultivated Shin power. Who was he? Chapter 718, Pseudo-Shin Device. The angel device raiment, it really is a Shin device. Suemo sighed in praise. He looked down at the blue armor that tightly wrapped around him and the layer of faint but dense flames. The serene blue flames burned soundlessly. When he channeled Shin power, the angel device raiment would automatically form this kind of water blue flame. This caused the armor that appeared to have been made from layers of clear blue crystal to become even more beautiful. When Suemo channeled a little over half of his Sun Shin power capacity, the snowy white wings would give off golden flames. When they moved, sparks would fall. These sparks were miniature Shin fire. If one came into contact with it, they would adhere, and burn until everything was ash. The serene blue and the gold flames intersected and shined, yet they did not give off any presence. Their ability to conceal themselves was greater than any Yao art or spell that Suemo knew of. There was a faint tinge of blood over Suemo's vision. He could easily see the see-through over 3 zhang of thick rock. Even deeply hidden Jinji were clear to his eyes. The more he used it, the more Suemo liked it. There was no hindrance when he channeled Shin power into it, and when he wore the angel device raiment, he could activate a Shin technique using less than 8/10 of the Shin power it normally took. Suemo had Xing Lianer try as well. When Xing Lianer channeled moon Shin power, the angel device raiment would flash with a faint moonlight. What was most fantastical was that when the wings danced, a crescent moon would occasionally appear and the Shin power shedding off it was sharp instead. Ague was the eeriest. When she wore the angel device raiment, the dark red mask would become purple, and the snowy white wings would become as black as ink and give off faint black mist. The blue armor would also become pitch black. If she stood there and did not move for over 3 breaths, she would disappear into the darkness like smoke. As expected of a Shin device. Before this, Suemo had not thought that the angel device raiment would be a Shin device. Now that the old man pointed it out, he immediately tried and many places that had puzzled him were now clear. He reluctantly took the angel device raiment off. He now understood its value. The old man was right. The angel device raiment was something he desired, but also a hot potato. Also, Suemo was willing to trade it for something useful for Ague. The angel device raiment was good, but Zuemo had confidence that he would be able to forge even better Shin devices in the future. Strictly speaking, the angel device raiment was only a pseudo-Shin device, and not a true one. What worried Zuemo more was the undying Shin power in a Gue that had started to change. Neither Pu Yao nor Wei had heard of the undying Shin seal, but the two did not feel the old man had been lying. Zuemo moved his gaze away from the angel device raiment, and asked, "What do you think of the old man?" "The old man cultivates Shin power," Pu Yao said coldly. His eyes were narrowed. A cold light moved through the blood pupil like a blade revolving in the sunlight. All the signs indicated that Pu Yao was not in a good mood. He had always been the strongest support behind Zuemo. No matter if it was Yao arts, spells, Mo skills, he had guided Zuemo. Yet in the blink of an eye, as though it was a dream, he found that the world seemed to change. People that cultivated Shin power, and were stronger than him had appeared. The strong return of Shin power had caused this world to become unfamiliar, and this tide was not something that an individual's power could reverse. This made Zuemo feel dispirited, and Pu Yao, who was extremely competitive, disliked this feeling. He is very strong. Even in my era, he would be strong. Wei's expression was unusually grave. He had existed for longer than Pu Yao, from the last stages of the ancient era to now, and to the era of Shin power returning. Those memories that had almost disappeared gradually started to become clear again. Yet, while he seemed to have known them, the memories felt completely different. This was going to be a new era. Pu Yao quickly calmed down, and he buried the cold glint in his eyes. As one of the strongest in the world at his time, Pu Yao possessed a strong mind and unparalleled calmness. He feels enmity towards you, but it seems that he isn't your enemy. He is very friendly towards Ague, and should have a deep connection to her. Yes, even in our era, the scab fragrance is a very rare treasure and has unique effects to calm the soul. I hadn't thought there would be scab fragrance here. They definitely have a deep relationship. Otherwise, he would not freely give such a valuable treasure. Wei nodded and agreed with Pu Yao's speculation. Wei would only not be a nag when he was discussing serious matters now. Zuemo nodded as well. His thoughts were about the same as the other two. He knows my identity, that means that he has paid attention to me for a long time. He has a deep relationship to Ague, so it is very likely he knows my origins. Next time, I have to learn this. Zuemo had a thoughtful expression. When the angel device raiment is being sold, he will definitely be observing from the shadows. There will be a chance to meet with him again. But the angel device raiment is a big problem. When he spoke of this, Zuemo couldn't help but grimace. Actually, before the old man's reminder, he had detected something from the tsunami of invitations. Yet when the secret of the angel device raiment, being a pseudo-Shin device, was revealed, he knew that trouble was still ahead of him. It was a good idea to trade the angel device raiment for those treasures, but if he was the least bit careless, the situation would spiral out of control. This was the first pseudo-Shin device that had appeared in so many years. There were many people that were willing to risk anything to get it. It is slightly troublesome, Pu Yao said coldly. If they scheme, your identity is a sensitive one, you cannot expose Shin power, Tseng Lianer and Ague cannot fight. Zuemo's brow furrowed. Have rare artifacts hall come protect us? Pu Yao snorted. They don't know that the angel device raiment is a pseudo-Shin device. If they knew, the first ones with devious ideas will be them. Also, this time, the ones that are coming are the big names, rare artifacts hall cannot stop them. Zuemo found this was very troublesome. Pu Yao was right. This time, the ones who had come were big names. Mo Shin Temple, Tian Huan, Kun Luen, the Yao Council of Elders, all the Mo marshals, and hidden experts like the old man who were of unknown origins but had unfathomable power. If those people tried to do something to him, Rare Artifacts Hall could not stop him. Yet he could not expose his identity and fight. Use Jingji, Wei suddenly said, before they react. Set up a large Jinji. The seal formations and MO matrices Jinji that Golden Crow Camp have studied are already mature. Golden Crow Camp. Zwa Mo stilled. It had been very long since he had communicated with them. The communication was usually one way, where he would send the results of his own studies back to Golden Crow Camp for them to study at regular intervals. The idea of setting up Jinji was a good one. If the Jinji he set was powerful enough, and he was in control, he would not have to worry about anything happening. But then he thought of the people coming. If they were not marshals, they were terrifying experts like the MO gods. What level of Jinji could do that? Zwa Mo did not have Jinji that could suppress people at the level of marshals and MO gods. If he had a year or more, he might be able to create one, but there was no time for him to think. Would Golden Crow Camp have such a powerful large-scale Jinji? Zwa Mo muttered inside. The present Golden Crow Camp was hundreds of times as large as in the past. Because of their rapid expansion, their original site was unable to hold so many people. The two masters found an intermediate-sized cloud island to be the base for Golden Crow Camp. This island was renamed Golden Crow Cloud Island. Golden Crow Cloud Island was the most famous center for seals, forging, and MO weapons in Cloud Jie. Along with the return of Lil Miss and Bihan, Cloud Jie's rate of expansion rapidly increased. With almost an unstoppable presence, they took dozens of Jia in one push. Among those were Xiuzhe, Mo, and Yao Jies. Collectively, this was called Mo Cloud C. Mo from Zwa Mo, Cloud C. For their origin of Cloud Jia, the environment of Golden Crow Cloud Island was outstanding. There was an active volcano was tamed by the Golden Crow Camp using a fire formation that was hundreds of li long. They had also asked the Mist People to find some astounding high-quality cold caves under the mountain range of the thick Cloud Sea. The previous low-level members of Golden Crow Camp were now all in high positions and were influential people. Wei Qingbin started his daily task like usual. His composed face did not have the past wariness and youth. Wei Qingbin, who had been skilled in making miniature Jinji, was deeply trusted by the two masters. In these years, he had worked tirelessly. Adding to the seal formations and MO matrices in the Pu Wei library, his present skill level would be that of a grandmaster if he was outside Golden Crow Camp. But he was willing to stay in the heavily guarded Golden Crow Camp. Other than his research on the topics that interested him every day, the time that he anticipated the most was the reflections that Darren would send through the 10-finger prison occasionally. What Darren sent was the greatest secret in Golden Crow Camp. Other than the core members that could read them, they were not open to outsiders. And Wei Qingbin was responsible for receiving them and immediately organizing them. Wei Qingbin liked staying here, mostly because he could see the reflections first. For this duty, he had defeated some strong competitors to obtain this coveted position. Just like usual, what Darren had learned was passed over. He methodically imprinted the contents using high-level jade scrolls. Like he was savoring delicious food, he read word by word and didn't bear to finish reading. However, even the longest content would be finished at some point. But when Wei Qingbin reached the end, he froze. Darren required a large-scale Jinji. He only reacted after a long few moments. Without a second word, he sent out 2 paper cranes to inform the two masters. In a short amount of time, all the core members of Golden Crow Camp were gathered in one hall. Everyone was discussing the meaning of Darren's words. Of course, Darren's meaning was very simple. Everyone was just very curious, was Darren going to build a city again? In the preliminary battle strategies of Cloud Jie, defense had been the most important, so Golden Crow Camp had invested great amounts of energy and resources into that. The two masters saw more from Zwa Mo's words, the stronger, the better. This was Darren's focus. The strongest. The two exchanged a look. Sun Bao said gravely, "How about that set?" The entire place immediately became silent. Everyone knew which set Master Sun Bao was talking about. Many people acted to speak, but everyone still remained silent. That set. Chapter 719, that set of Jinji. Everyone in Golden Crow Camp knew of the set of Jinji that Master Sun Bao spoke of. Influenced by their initial expansion strategy, the study of Jinji had always been popular on the island. At that time Guard Camp had been having their MO matrices engraved and activating bloodlines, meaning this was the time when the study of MO matrices had been the most popular as well. A person who usually was not very eye-catching suddenly suggested a crazy idea. Use seal scripts as the structure and fill it with MO matrices. Many people had been studying the Jinji of the MO, especially the large amounts of valuable Jinji that Pu Yao and Wei had provided. That had broadened the vision of Golden Crow Camp. However, no one had thought of merging the two together. This person had actually found an outstanding seal script framework. So when he threw out his idea, it had attracted almost everyone in the camp. Interested, they had started to help him perfect this extra-large Jinji. The creation of large-scale Jinji was an extremely complex and vast work. It was made from countless little seal formations. This number might be 100,000, it might be 1,000,000. A person alone, even if it was an expert like Sui Mo, would need many years to create something like this. Yet when all of Golden Crow Camp started to work with the two masters managing, their progress was rapid. After spending 2 months of time, a super Jinji of unprecedented complexity and size finally took form. Because it had been created by everyone, and their preferences and skills had been different, it was possible to see the influence of a number of styles. However, its main framework was outstanding, and it was balanced. After the Jinji was finished, all of the camp was stunned by this Jinji. Theoretically, its power surpassed any kind of Jinji they knew of. This astounding conclusion excited the entire camp. Everyone agreed to actually create this Jinji yet and at that time. There were many places that needed Jinji that they could use this at, but they quickly reached an obstacle. They found that the difficulty in forging the core seal formation far surpassed their abilities. No matter what they tried, they could not realize this fanciful dream. After working multiple months on it, and not having success, this Jinji was naturally placed to the side. Darren wanted the most powerful Jinji. Sun Bao's first thought was this Jinji. This basically is not realistic, someone objected. But when they finished speaking, someone argued, we can't do it, but it doesn't mean that Darren cannot. People thought, yes, Darren was a freak that built a city with only his own power. Maybe this thing could finally be realized on Darren's hands. Pass this to Darren, and let Darren decide if he will use it or not. In the end, it was Master Ji Wei that made the decision. Master Sun Bao nodded and agreed. This set of Jinji doesn't have a name, everyone, give it a name. Monkey Ming, you thought of the concept for the Jinji, give it a name, someone shouted from within the crowd. It caused a roar of laughter. Monkey Ming's true name was Ming Guan Shan, but because he was short and thin, people called him Monkey Ming and he did not object. Monkey Ming's face flushed bright red. He stood up and said, everyone created this together. Ho, Brother Ming is trying to deflect the responsibility, as long as you don't call it Ming Gu Jinji, it's all fine. Another person teased and everyone laughed. Even Master Ji Wei smiled. This Jinji came from your creativity, you should name it, do not refuse. Then someone shouted, but it has to be domineering and impressive. Monkey Ming did not refuse. He tilted his head and thought for a while before he said embarrassedly, then it will be called the King's Forbidden Firmament. King's Forbidden Firmament. How is it? Have you enjoyed your days? Feng Xinz had a friendly smile on his face. Qinghua Shui bowed slightly. Many thanks, Darren, for indulging me. Feng Xinz looked at the composed Qinghua Shui. A hint of admiration couldn't help but flash through his eyes. This really was a woman that could keep calm. Yet this type of woman was usually hard to deal with. Feng Xinz grimaced inside. After some more time, the Council of Elders will send people over. Do you know why? Feng Xinz said. Angel device raiment. Qinghua Shui was not stupid. She was also around Zuemo and understood the general situation. Yes. Feng Xinz took a deep breath. He decided to be honest. The angel device raiment is a pseudo-Shin device, and in this era, up until now it is the first creation that is so close to a Shin device. It is very important to us. Looking at Qinghua Shui, who only smiled and didn't respond, Feng Xinz felt a headache coming. I hope that you can help us. If you can give us aid, the Blue Flower family will receive a higher status among the Yao, and your brother will be able to receive the later stages of the Yao art he is studying, Feng Xinz said. Feng Xinz smiled slightly. My brother's talents are limited, even if he has the knowledge, it will be difficult for him to advance. With his personality, this kind of calm and ordinary life is the best for him. As to the Qinghua family, my family is a branch family, and have never refused our duty to the main family. I have heard a saying, the power that one enjoys should be paired with the appropriate responsibilities. Feng Xinz's admiration rose. Yes, power and responsibility should be equal. Then have the other people of the Blue Flower worry about that. However, I hope that, when it does not harm Grandmaster Xiao Yunhai, you can give us some conveniences. Qinghua Shui bowed and said, many thanks for your understanding. Pay attention to your safety. It will not be peaceful in the next while, Feng Xinz reminded. Qinghua Shui nodded. I need to return. Finishing, she bid farewell to Feng Xinz, turned and walked inside. Returning to the inner compound, worry finally came up into her eyes. She knew Xiao Yunhai's identity, and knew that if his identity was exposed, it would be terrible. Focused on her thoughts, she did not notice her surroundings. When she noticed there was someone in front of her, she seemed to wake up from a dream. She lifted her head and saw Xiao Mo gazing at her. Qinghua Shui was strangely alarmed, but she quickly recovered her calm. She bowed and said, Darren. Zuemo waved his hand and set up Jinji around to stop people from eavesdropping. After doing this, he finally spoke. Hey, we only fought once in the past, you don't have to chase me all the way here. Qinghua Shui stilled. She knew that Xiao Mo recognized her. She smiled. I'm just curious about you. Curious? Zuemo felt this explanation was too, he didn't know how to describe it. He asked helplessly, because of curiosity, you ran to the Mo territories? I had nothing else to do, Qinghua Shui said in a deliberately relaxed tone. Zuemo covered his forehead and sighed sorrowfully. He was completely defeated by this invincible reason. Aren't you afraid that I will kill you? Don't you know how dangerous? Will you? Zuemo's expression froze on his face. A moment later, he snorted coldly and said, maybe. Do you know Guest's nickname in the past? They called me the Bloody Hand Butcher. If I haven't killed 10,000, I've killed at least 8,000. Qinghua Shui listened with a small smile and didn't interrupt. Was this woman's mind rusty? Zuemo felt for the first time that he didn't know how to keep talking. He shook his head and decided to put this problem to the side. From his observations in the past few days, this woman's mind wasn't normal, but she was still a reliable person. Since you have come, Ji will not waste labor. Zuemo muttered, go to the 10-finger prison, someone will find you. 10-finger prison. Someone will find her. Qinghua Shui was slightly puzzled, but she didn't ask. She nodded briskly. All right. Zuemo was completely defeated. This girl was not normal, she didn't even ask. If the angel device raiment caused the entire world to have currents flowing under the surface, then the hot tide caused by the Earth Mo weapons was something that every person could feel. If one had to say who was in the worst mood right now, it was the merchants of Nether Spring Jie. For them, the reverse shadow soul silkgrass was rare, but they had one or two in stock. But Buzhou City was many jia away and they could only stare. Those were Earth Mo weapons. When Chuan traded for the clearly chakrams, people felt even more regret. At this time, inside a sky shark, a yellow-faced man stood silently in the corner. His appearance was ordinary, and his presence was not very strong, but his back was straight and his spirit could not be disguised. If Zuo was here and saw this figure, he would definitely blurt out, "Eldest Shixiang." Wei Sheng. When the news that one could use reverse shadow soul silkgrass to trade for Earth Mo weapons spread, Wei Sheng instantly concluded that Xiao Yunhai was Zuo. He did not hesitate. After disguising himself, he started to travel day and night towards Buzhou City. Fighting in order to elevate himself had caused him to become a pond brimming with water. The content concerning Shen power that Zuo had sent him using paper cranes was the hand that brushed away the clouds and mist to show him a completely new path of the sword. On his journey, he had synthesized Zuo's knowledge, and comprehended a new method to use his mind to refine the god-killing blood sword. His presence became even more concealed, his sword essence more ethereal, and his past sharp edges had dissipated. He had gotten onto a sky shark. This way, he had more time to comprehend and meditate. While he could only just stand and there wasn't a place to sit, he quickly adjusted. If people in the surroundings noticed him, they would find to their surprise that Wei Sheng's presence was becoming even more ordinary. Even his spirit became fainter. This sky shark passed through many stops with people getting on and off. However, there were more getting on than getting off. The already tight quarters became even more crowded. While there were Mo matrices that filtered the air, it was still crowded and humid inside. Sound of complaints occasionally sounded. Wei Sheng leaned against the way, his eyes half-lidded as though he was asleep. Suddenly, an imperceptible light flashed across his half-lidded eyes but then disappeared. Several sharp gazes swept across him and he didn't seem to detect them. The other's gaze quickly moved away from him. Chapter 720, Trembling in Fear, King's Forbidden Firmament. Zuo was astounded when he received it. He was skilled and was immediately sucked into the unique framework. His skill was far beyond those of Golden Crow Camp and he quickly concluded that constructing this Jinji was plausible and extremely powerful. Even he didn't know how strong it would be. Zuo swept across, reading multiple lines at once. Just at a glance, he could know where there were mistakes in the details. Other than several extremely small flaws, there were actually no major mistakes in such a complex Jinji. This astounded Zuo. It had to be said that even those famous Jinji would usually have several weaknesses, but these weaknesses were just unknown. From Zuo's perspective, King's Forbidden Firmament was a super Jinji that was almost close to perfect. However, he could only know how powerful this novel structure that merged seal scripts and Mo matrices together once he made the Jinji. An obstacle that was unsurpassable to Golden Crow Camp was not a problem at all for Zuo, who had the Sunshin fire. The King's Forbidden Firmament deeply attracted him. He was extremely curious about its power. Without almost any hesitation, Zuo started to forge. After making the Angel Device Raiment, and the 4 Earth Mo weapons, Zuo's skill had almost reached the point of perfection. Not just in the Mo territories, even in the Xiuzhe realms, his forging skill would not be lacking in comparison to those forging masters. He had enough materials and countless treasures. The strong feeling of danger caused Zuo to forget to rest and eat. Ian felt his heart beat wildly. Grandmaster Xiao Yunhai suddenly requested a terrifying list of materials. The types of materials on it were 10 times greater than last time. What did Grandmaster want to do? Did he want to forge Earth Mo weapons again? Even a person as experienced as Ian couldn't help but inhale when he thought of this. When the 4 Earth Mo weapons had appeared, Ian had been extremely excited. The amount of attention from all of the Mo territories had caused him to see the glorious future of Rare Artifacts Hall. However, he smelt strong danger from the undercurrents caused by the Angel Device Raiment. As more and more people came to Buzhou City, he became even more anxious. Even the arrogant Tang family was docilely curled up by the side. Their battalion was stationed outside the city, but they didn't dare to send them inside. Even he knew that there were at least 3 martial levels in the city, and this number was increasing. Any martial would be enough to wipe all of Buzhou City from the map. In a fight between 2 martials, everything within 1,000 li would be flattened. If martials were in melee battle. Ian shook. He had put away Blue Horsefly a long time ago. Right now, he only hoped to get Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass from the 2 MO weapons and have the gradually uncontrollably situation cool down. Worried that the Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass would excite Grandmaster, he had concealed the news that they had gotten 1 Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass. He was waiting for the last 2 Earth MO weapons to be exchanged before he presented them to Grandmaster together. If Grandmaster saw the Reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass, was excited, and started to forge Earth MO weapons again. When the worried Ian saw the materials list that Zhua MO had handed, his expression changed. 10 times the previous amount of materials. With Grandmaster's skill, how many Earth MO weapons would it be? Was Grandmaster crazy? Did he want to become a wholesale supplier of Earth MO weapons? Ian, who had hurried to persuade Zhua Mo to do otherwise, was stopped by Tseng Lianer. Zhua Mo was forging the core parts of the King's Forbidden Firmament, and could not be disturbed. Ian immediately felt his head swell and didn't know whether to advance or flee. If he did not see Grandmaster, he could not persuade him otherwise. Also, Grandmaster had told him to prepare the materials at the fastest possible speed. If Grandmaster came out, and saw that the materials were not be prepared, it would be terrible. No matter what, Ian did not dare to offend Zuemo now. Ian decided to not care. If the sky fell, it would crush the tallest first. It was correct to first pander to Grandmaster. Returning to Rare Artifacts Hall, he had his subordinates start to prepare materials. There were no walls without holes in the world. Rare Artifacts Hall was the focus of attention by many, and the movement of so much materials could not be concealed. Grandmaster was going to forge Earth MO weapons again. The news quickly spread as though it had wings. After flying for 3 days and nights, the Sky Shark finally stopped. It needed to rest for an entire day. The passengers who had been suffocated inside the Sky Shark charged out like a flood and breathed in the fresh air outside. The merchants that had been waiting by the side immediately came over and warmly called at the customers. Wei Xing unnoticeably moved away from the merchants. He carefully followed behind that group of people along with the flow of people moving. There was no expression on his face, and there was only an occasional flash of cold that would flash through his eyes. Kunlun Sword Xiu. Those people were Kunlun Sword Xiu. Wei Xing was almost unusually sensitive to sword essence. While the others were disguised, there wasn't any slip-up, and their presences were concealed. They would not expect someone would be able to see sword essence so clearly. Detecting the unique Kunlun sword essence on their bodies, Wei Xing's murderousness rose. The individuals were strong, and should be inner sect members of Kunlun. Kunlun inner sect members on this Sky Shark that was only going to Buzhou City. Then their target was definitely Zuemo Shitty. Wei Xing suppressed the murderousness he felt and decided to first investigate thoroughly. Kunlun definitely wouldn't make such a major move for a few Earth MO weapons. They definitely had a goal unknown to others. They really are country bumpkins, just a few Earth MO weapons is enough to excite them to this. Hua Shan couldn't resist complaining. There are too many people inside, it is smelly and stuffy, so irritating. Jean Ran comforted her, Shimmy, hold on for a few more days, when we meet up with Su Shishu at Buzhou City, it will not be so difficult. Why didn't eldest Xixiang come this time? When Hua Shan mentioned Lin Qian, her eyes became full of admiration. If eldest Xixiang had come, that would be great, it has been so long since we saw eldest Xixiang. Jean Ran grimaced inside. He liked Hua Shan, but Hua Shan admired eldest Xixiang Lin Qian. It was difficult to feel jealous of eldest Xixiang, who was also his idol. In the sect, the great majority of female Xiao admired eldest Xixiang. The heavily bearded middle-aged person who had been silent all this time suddenly spoke. Your eldest Shixiang has other duties, he is working much harder. The two immediately closed their mouths. The middle-aged person was their Shishu Lei Yi. Lei Yi Shishu was one step into Fanqiu. And if it wasn't that the mission this time was too important, the sect definitely would not have sent Lei Yi Shishu. While Jin Ren and Hua Shan also had Yunying cultivation, Lei Yi Shishu was multiple times stronger than them. More important than our mission this time? Hua Shan couldn't resist asking. Jin Ren was also curious. He knew that for this mission, the sect had sent out 2 Fanqiu Shishu, and 7 Shishu that were close to Fanqiu. However, the death of the Xian Kong Temple Elder Corps meant that Kunlun did not dare to slack off in this mission. Lei Yi glanced at her and said coldly, "You have forgotten the sect rules? What you can ask, and what you cannot ask, don't you know?" Hua Shan's face immediately paled and she trembled. Jin Ren at the side also felt intimidated. Suddenly, Lei Yi's eyes widened. "Friend, stop sneaking and introduce yourself." Wei Sheng, who was in the shadows, grimaced inside. He was devout towards the sword, and the sword oath he had taken was deeply engraved into his mind. When he saw the sword show of Kunlun, the sword oath would appear in his mind and his murderousness would unconsciously leak out. However, since the other had found him, he would not hide. He held the blood sword as he walked out of the shadows. Wei Sheng. Jin Ren's expression changed dramatically as he exclaimed. Hua Shan heard this and paled. Among those wanted by Kunlun, Wei Sheng was among the top. His name among the younger generation was extremely well known, as eldest Shixiang Lin Qian praised him. Many disciples did not accept this. Wukong Sword Sect. That obscure primitive sect. They had never even heard of it. But no matter if it was out of wariness or competitiveness, Wei Sheng's reputation was known among the younger Kunlun disciples. Lei Yi slowly said, "So you are Wei Sheng?" His expression was cold. As though he was looking down at an ant, he said indifferently, "Since we encountered you, today is the day you die." Hearing this, Wei Sheng raised the god-killing blood sword in his hand and bared his teeth. He said loudly, "This is what I want to say to you. All of you, come at me together." Jin Ren and Hua Shan stilled. They hadn't thought that Wei Sheng would be so arrogant. Lei Yi's murderousness burned in his eyes. He snorted coldly, "You don't know your limits." He didn't take out his sword and just pointed his fingers at Wei Sheng. Hiss crack. In a flash, countless dancing electrical snakes erupted from his hands. The blinding light caused one's vision to turn white for a moment. Almost in a blink, the lightning reached a terrifying level. The ground underneath his feet silently turned to dust. Lightning! A shout with a unique rhythm, the light suddenly exploded. The silver bright light caused Wei Sheng's vision to turn white. An irregularly shaped lightning bolt that was the thickness of an arm suddenly shot out of his finger, tore apart the air, and headed straight at Wei Sheng. Boom! The deep thunder spread. The air between the two was taken over by the lightning in that moment. There was nothing faster than lightning. Before Wei Sheng could block, the curving lightning was almost a hand length from his hand. He could clearly feel the destructive power contained in this lightning sword energy. If he was struck, he would immediately turn to dust. At this moment of life and death, Wei Sheng's mind was unusually clear. The god-killing blood sword in his hand felt a threat and the blood light erupted. Wei Sheng swung it almost without any thought. The small amount of Shen power that he had managed to form inside his body furiously flooded towards the god-killing blood sword with all of his Ling power. Chapter 721 Swear by the sword. Wei Sheng's body shook, the air around him immediately turned blood red, marks of blood appearing on the body of the god-killing blood sword. A thick killing presence swept out. A blood-red curtain materialized with the sword's swing. The thick lightning sword energy smashed against the blood curtain with the destructive power of nature. The blood curtain lit up. Howls of wild beasts roared from within, and threads of blood appeared on the blood-red curtain. Lei Yi's expression changed slightly. Both the blood curtain and the blood sword emanated a strong and savage presence. Lei Yi knew that people who cultivated sword scriptures like this would have their minds corroded over time to become bloodthirsty and cruel. This kind of sword xiao was extremely dangerous. They didn't need any reason to kill people, and were true killing madmen. However, those that cultivated a killing sword would have difficulty advancing the further they got. They easily got lost in the bloodlust of killing and would walk to their own destruction in the end. Yet when he saw Wei Xing clearly just now, under that terrifying curtain of blood, Wei Xing's eyes were filled with devotion to the sword, and his attachment to his belief. Even his presence was clear and honest without any hint of the insanity. With just a glance, Lei Yi detected Wei Xing's stone-hard determination. In a flash, he thought of Lin Qian, and unconsciously compared the two. Lin Qian was much better than this boy. Lei Yi instinctively thought this, but at this moment, his gaze met Wei Xing's gaze. Behind the curtain of blood, there seemed to be something burning in that pair of eyes. Was it belief? Or stubbornness? It burned so hot, so determined, without any qualms, or concerns. Even the thick blood curtain could not hide it. Lin Qian was much better than this boy, but in terms of attachment to the sword, he was slightly lacking. Lei Yi jumped in fright at the conclusion he had just made. How was it possible? The two shouldn't be able to be compared at all. Who was Lin Qian? He was the disciple with the most outstanding in talent and personality from hundreds of thousands of Kunlun disciples. He received the best mentorship, he was hardworking and never slacked off, he was born noble. Wei Xing was from a rural little sect, starting as a low sword servant, but all of these thoughts flashed by like lightning. Lei Yi was paralyzed in shock at his own thoughts. This boy could not be left alive. This thought exploded like thunder in his mind. Killing intent immediately filled his entire body. Countless little bolts of lightning swam around his eyes. His hair danced in the wind. Lightning shrouded his body, and his presence reached a peak. At this moment, he didn't have any cares about exposing his identity. There was only one person in Lei Yi's eyes, only one thought. No matter how, no matter the price he had to pay, this boy had to die. Blocking the other's strike, the god-killing blood sword in Wei Xing's hand immediately became excited. It rang and hummed in Wei Xing's hand and tried to break free of his grip. Wei Xing's hand seemed to be forged from steel and didn't move a sliver. The battle spirit in his eyes burned even hotter. Gripping the god-killing blood sword, Wei Xing's body bowed slightly, curling inward into a ball. However, his slightly raised face was unparalleled in its determination. Swear, by the sword. The words came from deep within his chest, spoken with great confidence and a steely determination. It was like a hammer smashing against their minds. The ringing of the god-killing blood sword in Wei Xing's hand suddenly stopped. As the last word was said, Wei Xing's sword was slowly swung as though it was thousands of caddies heavy. The marks of blood on the sword seemed to be attracted by a great force, floating up from the sword and slowly spinning around the blade. Lei Yi felt extreme danger. The lightning energy in his eyes grew. A silver and uniquely shaped flying sword appeared in front of him. This flying sword seemed to be a section of a lightning bolt, about 1 zhang long and irregularly shaped. There were many splits like branches of a tree, it twisted and turned. It was completely silver, and the material that it was made from was unknown. Lei Yi's famed flying sword, Sky Lightning Branch. When the Sky Lightning Branch was pointed to the sky, the cloud layer within hundreds of li suddenly gathered towards the space above his head like an avalanche. In a moment, there were black clouds gathered above Lei Yi's head that stretched endlessly. The sky immediately became as dark as night. Hiss crack. The sky suddenly lit up with a twisted and burning bolt of lightning. The lightning landed on the Sky Lightning Branch, and the sword lit up. This was just a start. As the lightning continued to strike the Sky Lightning Branch, it became almost as bright as the sun. An astounding amount of lightning surrounded it. The lightning accumulated in the cloud layer within hundreds of li, all gathered on it. The sky lightning branch seemed to be alive as it moved within a thick ball of lightning. The entire city was disturbed by such a great noise. "Stop!" Amo shouted angrily, "are you crazy? Careful, they are Shioja." Lei ignored them. A cold smirk appeared at the corner of his mouth. His eyes that flashed with lightning were icy. Some Mo tried to come closer. Several bolts of lightning suddenly shot out of the gathering ball of lightning and struck them. The lightning flashed, and there was nothing left where the people had been floating there. The other Mo all changed expression. No one dared to come close. Jin Ran and Hua Shan looked excitedly at Lei Shixu. While they had known that Lei Shixu was unfathomably powerful, they were still greatly amazed when they saw it with their own eyes. Lei was like a lightning god on earth. He looked on coolly, his index and middle finger pointing out together. His eyes were wide as he shouted, "Die!" The sky lightning branch within the ball of lightning suddenly turned into an unusually thick bolt of lightning that dove towards Wei Shen with an unstoppable presence. The lightning was like a great enormous silver sword with a terrifying presence as it split the sky. The blinding silver light illuminated the world, reflected in countless pairs of terrified eyes. The power of nature amazed everyone. This sword strike contained the power of the lightning in the world. People were unable to make out if it was lightning or sword essence. Yet in this patch of silver-white lightning, a blood curtain seemed to slowly, yet determinately spread. The deep voice from within the blood curtain was so clear, and so determined. Even in front of the power of nature, it did not submit at all, and did not tremble. By the offering of Kunlun blood. By the offering of Kunlun blood? Lei's eyes turned even colder. All the Ling power in his blood flooded out without any regard for consequences. The sky lightning branch at the tip of that curving twisted lightning bolt trembled. The surrounding lightning became even denser. It pierced the air, and shot at Wei Sheng at a speed hard to detect with the naked eye. A hint of joy flashed across Lei's cold eyes. An indescribable understanding appeared in his mind. With this sword strike, he had touched Fanxiu, and touched the fundamental rules of the world. His cultivation that had not improved for a long time broke through at this time. He was so happy he wanted to howl at the sky. At this time, he suddenly saw out of the corner of his eyes an unusually bright and thin bloodline follow the path of Wei Sheng's sword strike. It penetrated the blood curtain and headed straight for the lightning striking down out of the sky. The bloodline wasn't any slower than Lei's strike. Lei's eyes widened. How was that possible? Compared to the thick lightning created by the sky lightning branch, the bloodline was so thin it was almost overlooked. Compared to the astoundingly destructive presence of the sky lightning branch, the thin line of blood didn't have any presence. It appeared in front of the sky lightning branch seemingly without any warning. Both attacks were extremely fast, so fast that both sides could not react at all. Hiss! A strange dissonant howl rang out. The bloodline was like an extremely sharp knife that cut across tofu. The strangely shaped and seemingly alive flying sword, sky lightning branch, which caused the thick lightning and changed the color of the sky, was split apart by this nondescript thin line of blood. Split into two. The bloodline that sliced through the lightning disappeared from Lei's vision. Before he could react, he suddenly felt as though a slippery thing flashed through his mind. He had never felt something so strange. A ruler straight mark appeared on the small embryo that had started to form in his body. An embryo that now faded into nothingness. Lei's eyes went wide. His expression was slightly puzzled. An extremely small and straight mark of blood slowly appeared on his face and body. This. The puzzlement in Lei's eyes gradually turned into great terror. This was Shen power. The blood which contained Ling power sprouted from that blood mark that traversed his body. His vision turned bloody red. His remaining Ling power could feel the presence of his two nearby disciples who were now just like him. Bewildered, endless darkness came at him. He seemed to hear a noise and then he lost consciousness. What he didn't know was that their fresh blood had turned into 3 blood arrows that was absorbed by the god-killing blood sword. The world was covered by silver light. The lightning that lost control was a savage power. It exploded. The bright light forced people's eyes closed. All of their senses were useless in front of such a savage explosion. Everyone's minds were blank and they were like branches swept up in a flood. Wei Xing's face was pale and bloodless. He held the god-killing blood sword with a death grip and allowed it to carry him among the turbulence. In the moment he touched ground, his legs gave out and he almost fell over. After killing such a strong enemy, there was no joy on his face. There was faint sorrow in his mind. However, his mind was strong and he quickly broke free of his sorrow. There was a bitter smile on his face. This god-killing blood sword was powerful, but with his power, he only had enough for 1 strike. After that 1 strike, he would be exhausted and wouldn't have any power to fight back. That strike just now didn't just take all the Ling and Shen power in his body, it had also used almost 1/5 of the blood in his body. Wei Xing had never cultivated a Mo physique. His body was not on a level comparable with Sui Mo. 1/5 of all his blood was enough to almost kill him. Right now, he had no power, and he didn't know when he could recover. For Xiuhe, the blood in their bodies was their purest source of power. If it was used it was difficult to recover. Shaking his head, Wei Xing did not feel any regret. The sword oath he had vowed was set in his heart. Not just 1/5 of his blood, even if he lost his life, he would not regret it at all. However, he could not go on like this to Buzhou City. Wouldn't he become a burden to Shidi? At this time, the god-killing blood sword in his hands suddenly moved and started to pull him down into the ground. Wei Xing was shocked. He felt as though he was sinking into water without any sluggishness, and quickly sank down into the earth. The god-killing blood sword continued to pull him downwards. Chapter 722, Progress Deep Underground. Wei Xing's eyes were tightly closed and his face was as white as paper. Suddenly, a thread of blood came out of the body of the god-killing blood sword. The blood flow quickly increased. With the streams of blood coming off the sword, it appeared as though it was just pulled out of a pool of blood. The viscous blood seemed to be alive as it inched along the sword, climbing onto Wei Xing's sword hand, and up onto his arm. Blood continued to come out of the god-killing blood sword, and then visibly seeped into Wei Xing's body. Color began returning to Wei Xing's white face. In the earth, Wei Xing did not give off any presence. There were thousands of parts piled up in mountains around Zuemo, each one a different shape and design. He didn't rest, eat, or drink for 5 whole days, one part after another forming in his hand and then being thrown onto the mountainous pile next to him. Even with Zuemo's strong Mo physique, his body showed clear signs of weariness and exhaustion. However, the Sunshin fire in front of him was unusually steady and didn't tremble at all. Zuemo's astounding forging skill was perfectly displayed. Another part was finished. He stopped and shoved a handful of Lingdan into his mouth. He carefully felt Ling power surge into his dried channels. The Sun Seed was best for recovering Shen power but Zuemo couldn't bear to use them. But he had a huge pile of Lingdan in his ring, and he could waste them as he wished. With every Sun Seed used of his finite supply, there would be one less. Taking the time while his Ling power was recovering, he examined the King's Forbidden Firmament again. The Jinji that Golden Crow Camp had designed naturally leaned more towards seal formations, and the King's Forbidden Firmament was not an exception. While it used MO matrices, it was still mostly seal scripts. The seal scripts made up 7/10 and the MO matrices 3/10 of the Jinji. Zuemo's spell level had been exercised greatly by the astounding number of things forged, and adding on the aid of the Gravestone Oath, Zuemo's weakest skill, spells, had improved rapidly. Right now, it had reached the 2nd class and was the same as his Yao arts. After his greatest shortcoming was amended, his power had quickly increased. According to Puss system, Zhuo Mo's present Shen power level was intermediate Earth level, and his Shen technique was second class. However, it was far behind the Rhinoceros Mo god. The Rhinoceros Mo god's Shen power level was late Earth level, and his Shen technique was first class. If he didn't have the little Mo treasure cup, Zhuo Mo could not even hope to match the Rhinoceros Mo god. But after his Shen technique reached second class, Zhuo Mo's forging speed became even faster. His control of Sun Shen fire reached an astounding level. This meant that he would almost never make mistakes. The quality of the parts that he forged using Shen power far surpassed the level that Golden Crow Camp had required in their design. Altogether, there were 18,000 parts. Each part was a work of art, the perfect merging of Mo matrices and seal scripts giving off an unique beauty. Zhuo Mo found after forging these parts that the effect of Shen power in forging was even more outstanding. Shen power and Shen fire could almost completely purify the impurities in materials, and inscribe Mo matrices and seal scripts into the material. This kind of inscription was completely different from Ling power and was closer to a natural growth. Other than the astounding rate of Shen power expenditure, Zhuo Mo was overjoyed at its effects. Zhuo Mo used a new forging method for all the core parts. He called it the Shen forging method. Of the 18,000 parts, he forged 81 using the Shen forging method. What was another happy surprise to Zhuo Mo was that he found the Shen forging method could greatly increase the skill of Shen techniques. The skill level of Shen techniques was determined by the control level of Shen power. Previously, Zhuo Mo was only able to increase his Shen technique power through increasing his 3 powers. With the Shen forging method, he could use it to increase his Shen technique and control for multiplied effects. However, Zhuo Mo had tested. Not all materials could be used with the Shen forging method. Materials under 6th grade would turn to ash when the Shen forging method was used. Zhuo Mo found several kinds of patterns from the gold leaf that were close to Mo matrices and seal scripts. He called them Shen glyphs. He had used one on the angel device raiment, and it had been the simplest one. Zhuo Mo had now mastered 2 Shen glyphs. Other than the one he had used on the angel device raiment, he had one other Shen glyph. Materials that could support Shen glyphs had to be at least 8th grade. The reason for at least was because Zhuo Mo had tried with a 7th grade material and then watched as it turned into a pile of ash. He had some 8th grade materials but he didn't bear to use it to experiment. Only now did Zhuo Mo feel shocked by the grade of the Mo weapon rudiments he had created with the weapon layer craftsmanship. They were able to tolerate Shen glyphs, didn't mean they were at least 8th grade. This caused Zhuo Mo to be filled with interest about the weapon layering craftsmanship. While general level Mo weapons were expensive, but as long it was a Mo weapon, it could be bought. But 8th grade materials were not things that could be bought with Mabe. It definitely was a profitable business to use general level Mo weapons to convert to 8th grade materials. Little Mo Gu suppressed his urges to do business. He felt the recovering Shen power turn into the 3 powers and then slowly into Shen power. He once again went back to forging. 10 whole days. When the last part was finished, Zhuo Mo looked at the mountain of parts in front of him with a feeling of accomplishment. 18,000 parts. He had finished in 10 days. While he had finished all the required parts, he did not set up the Jinji immediately. He shoved a great number of Lingdan into his mouth and entered meditation. Only he would dare to use so many Lingdan at once. If it was a Xiuzha, their Ling channels would rupture and explode. Zhuo Mo's Mo physique was powerful, and his channels were much stronger than other Xiuzha. His Ling power could also turn into other powers and reduce the stress on his channels. 3 days later, he opened his eyes again. The faint Great Day matrices appeared on his eyes with an indescribable aura. All of the power in his body, and his tired mind had recovered to peak condition. Standing up, he waved his hand lightly and the mountain of parts in front of him disappeared into the air. Ian was very happy when Grandmaster summoned him immediately after leaving seclusion. This showed that Grandmaster trusted him, but when he learned that Grandmaster had not forged Earth Mo weapons, Ian was slightly disappointed. If Grandmaster forged Earth MO weapons, he could pick 2 for free. However, he was more relieved. As long as there were no more Earth MO weapons, the situation which was already so tense that a spark could ignite it would not be further exacerbated. Ian felt fear at the dangerous situation of Buzhou City. But Grandmaster's next words caused him to pale and almost jump up. Grandmaster. Please do not. The present Buzhou City is a barrel of dynamite, it might explode at any movement. If you leave the city now, Ian wanted to persuade Zhuo away. Zhuo knew his worry and comforted, it's fine, we will be careful and no one will know. You are familiar with the region, do you know any place nearby that has a river, mountain, and earth fire? Ian's expression was frantic as he opened his mouth to speak. Zhuo saw his expression and waved his hand to stop the other. He said, don't persuade me otherwise, I also know it is not safe outside. However, if something happens, can you keep me safe? This is relatively safe. Ian said. Relatively safe? Zhuo smirked coldly. If the marshal comes, is it still safe? If it is 2 marshals, is it still safe? 3. There are at least 5 marshals in the city. Ian broke out in a cold sweat and couldn't think of any counterarguments. Zhuo waved his hand and said gently, this cannot be blamed on you. I have to consider the worst-case situation. Is there any place nearby that satisfies my needs? Ian did not argue further. Since Grandmaster knew, then he definitely had some move that Ian didn't know. He thought for a moment and then his eyes lit up. He said, about 700 li northwest of Buzhou City, there is a place called the Grave Ghost Mound. It has a river, mountain, and earth fire. However, that place is heavy with Yin energy and ghost fiends frequently appear. It is also not a populous place. Zhuo heard this and didn't hesitate. Then we'll go to the Grave Ghost Mound. Ian gritted his teeth and nodded. Grandmaster, please wait for a moment. A short while later, the elite guards of Rare Artifacts Hall finished gathering. Zhuo's gaze swept the 70 guards in front of him and nodded inwardly. Rare Artifact Hall was really an old faction with a long history. Just these 70 people represented a considerable amount of power. Especially that guard leader with the indifferent expression, he was marshal level. Zhuo could not imagine a marshal willing to act as a guard leader for a business. No wonder Rare Artifacts Hall was so confident. They had such an expert, and naturally did not fear. Zhuo's gaze swept around. Agui, Tsing Lianer, and Bean Sprout were all here, and only Qinghua Shui was missing. What was that woman doing? Zhuo was puzzled and was about to ask Pu Yao when his vision blurred and Qinghua Shui appeared and bowed. Sorry for the wait. The moment that Qinghua Shui appeared, the guard leader's expression changed, and his pupils contracted. Zhuo examined Qinghua Shui. His expression did not change but he was shocked inside. Pu, what did you do to her? Zhuo immediately asked Pu Yao in secret. He remembered that Pu Yao had Qinghua Shui go to the 10-finger prison and most likely had passed something to her. However, the increase in her power was so great it was slightly terrifying. Pu Yao was lazy. Nothing major, I coincidentally had a completed, blue flower, on my hands so I gave it to her. Just that. Zhuo didn't believe it. Pu Yao said amusedly, the blue flower family are a bunch of idiots and wasted such a good seed. Her calmness is shocking, and she is the calmest person I have ever seen. She is born to cultivate the blue flower. Her accumulation is so great you cannot imagine it. However, she didn't have the following parts of the art so she was stuck at her previous level. Can you imagine it, the previous her compared to when she was 13 hasn't changed much. The blue flower family has no eyes. However, if she was not so calm, after being stuck for so many years, she would have exploded a long time ago. That is too exaggerated. Looking at Qinghua Shui, Zhuo was still amazed. There was such a freak in the world. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.